Chapter 1348. That's right. Yesterday, my demon-identifying bell kept ringing. Today, I used the demon-seizing mirror to check. This girl is actually of the heavenly fox bloodline. At the top of the clouds, a handsome young man in blue nodded gently. He couldn't hide the excitement in his eyes. The heavenly fox bloodline had only appeared once in the history of Qing-tsang. It was said that the heavenly fox bloodline had ascended from a small world. But even so, the heavenly fox bloodline still charmed the common people with unparalleled talent and dominated an era. And now, the girl in front of him could cause the demon-identifying bell to ring for a day and the demon-seizing mirror to shine with 7 colors. She must be of the pure-blood heavenly fox bloodline. Moreover, she was still young. As long as he captured her and tamed her for 100 years, she would be a great help in fighting in the future. The demon-controlling clan was one of the most mysterious clans in the south of Qing-tsang. There weren't many disciples in this clan, but they inherited the ancient demon-controlling technique. Almost all the beasts that were fancied by this clan's disciples would become their beast. It was said that when this technique was cultivated to the peak, one could control 10,000 beasts and form a clan with unparalleled power. He didn't expect that even this ancient clan would appear in this chaotic world. Heavenly Fox bloodline. I just don't know how many tails this girl has. If it's 3, then Senior Brother Song will make a big profit this time. She can transform with the aura of the venerable realm, and she has such a strange space power. This heavenly fox bloodline must be extremely terrifying. Previously, the young master became famous because he found an ancient species in the 100,000 mountains. If Senior Brother Song can capture this heavenly fox, not only will his combat power soar, but he can also, if there's something, the heavenly fox will do it. If there's nothing, we'll do it, he. The disciples of the demon-controlling clan sneered. Obviously, they were also shocked by Baijishi's beauty. This little fox is good at the Tao of space. If I want to capture her, I need your help. Songdi's eyes were cold. Since he had encountered her, he naturally couldn't let this pure-blood heavenly fox escape. With his demon-controlling clan's methods, not to mention a little venerable realm beast, even a saint realm beast would find it difficult to escape. This Sky Thunder Extreme Land was truly a place of fortune for him. The supreme treasure in the central Thunder Sea had yet to appear, and he had already encountered such a treasure trove of demonic beasts. Of course, Senior Brother Song, I heard that your sister is about to come out of seclusion. Could it be that she's also here for the treasure? A disciple asked with fear in his eyes. Songdi's cultivation was among the best in the demon-controlling sect. However, in comparison, his elder sister, Song He, was the true genius of the Azure continent. He ranked 12th among the top 100 talent. Apart from the demons, ghosts, Buddhists, and barbarians of the 4 extremes, there were only the 10 sequences and 11 heroes in the human orthodoxy who were more talented than him. In terms of combat strength, Senior Sister Song herself might not be a match for these 21 people. However, the Imperial Demon in her hands was comparable to a Saint Realm expert. Of course, it did not mean that these 21 people were the only ones who could suppress Senior Sister Song in the entire human race. After all, some of the descendants of the reclusive sects had never entered the world. Naturally, they were not on the list. That's right. This time, our sect came out to tell the other supreme orthodoxies that our demon-controlling clan wants to fight for this great opportunity. Once my sister comes out of seclusion, the fortune in the Thunder Sea will definitely fall into our hands. Song Di smiled proudly. He was naturally extremely confident in his sister's strength. More importantly, it was difficult for ordinary cultivators to set foot in the Thunder Extreme Land. The power of the heavenly thunder became more violent the deeper one went. However, it was precisely because of this that he dared to say that this fortune would definitely fall into his sister's hands. Because Song He's imperial demon was a thunder beast. With the help of this demon, Why should others be afraid? Great! Our demon-controlling clan will be famous in the world once we come out. Ha 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 ha! What are we waiting for? Senior brother, let's go and capture that little fox. The disciples of the demon-controlling clan laughed wildly. They rode on their demonic beasts and rushed toward the center of the thunder field. Whoosh! Whoosh! For 2 consecutive days, the sky above the thunder field was filled with rainbows. It was obvious that many sects wanted to take a look at the treasure in the Thunder Sea. Regardless of whether it was the supreme orthodoxies or the surrounding small sects, they all sent their disciples over to get a share of the loot. At this moment, a ray of golden light suddenly lit up in the depths of the thunder field. Immediately after, a terrifying wave of divine power surged out and turned into a spiritual array that was 100 feet wide. It imprisoned heaven and earth and sealed all things. 7-colored divine light overflowed as if a treasure had come out. It was shocking. However, the direction where the divine array appeared was not the center of the thunder field, but a deserted valley in the north. Many disciples looked at each other, but in the end they did not want to miss any clues. They turned around and rushed toward the deserted valley. What are you trying to do? At this moment, in a large valley surrounded by mountains in the north of the thunder field, a playful young girl in white clothes was looking at the 5 disciples of the demon-controlling clan with her hands on her waist. Her pink eyes were extremely charming. Although her face was slightly immature, it was extremely delicate and delicate. Her skin was as delicate and smooth as white jade. It was impossible to find any flaws. Her beautiful black hair was tied into 2 ponytails that hung over her shoulders. However, under this cute and well-behaved appearance, the young girl's small mouth was curled up in an evil smile that did not match her temperament. Hee. The 5 disciples of the demon-controlling clan looked at each other with a playful expression. They deliberately waited here and set up a demon-sealing array just to wait for this little girl to walk into the trap. However, from the looks of it, this girl didn't seem to be very smart. She was already trapped, but she still looked arrogant and domineering. Senior brother Song, let me. One of the disciples in white clothes smiled sinisterly. He lifted his foot and landed in front of Baijishi. How dare you, demon girl? Are you going to obediently surrender or do you want me to capture you? With just you? Baijishi hugged her arms and lightly tiptoed. Her expression became more and more disdainful. The bewildering butterfly ancestor said that if she was in trouble outside, she should report the name of Ling people. However, at this time, she had just stepped into the venerable realm and was confident in her combat strength. A group of rotten fish and shrimps, why should she use her identity to crush them? You don't know what's good for you. The disciple in white snorted coldly and suddenly pressed his palm down. It turned into a golden palm and was about to suppress Baijishi on the spot. Since you dare to make a move on your little grandaunt, don't blame me for being impolite. Baijishi's mouth raised a trace of a smirk. Her small hand suddenly clenched, and an ancient whip suddenly tore the sky and tore the spiritual palm to shreds with lightning speed. Her figure almost instantly disappeared on the spot. At this moment, the disciple in white only felt a chill in his heart and a trace of horror appeared in his eyes. Too strong. This kind of power that controlled space and disrupted time was simply impossible to guard against. A terrifying chill swept over, and the disciple in white immediately shouted angrily. Spiritual light bloomed around his body as he wanted to escape from this place. However, before his figure could fly out, the 7-foot-long ancient whip suddenly appeared at his neck. Chapter 1349. Gulp. The entire place fell silent. At this moment, the surrounding area of the desolate valley was already filled with spectating disciples. In particular, Baijishi's adorable appearance attracted the attention of many young geniuses. What a cute little girl! Who are these scum? How dare they attack such a cute little girl in broad daylight? Facing everyone's angry rebuke, Songdi's expression turned gloomy. He didn't expect junior brother Wuda, a 6th-rank exalt, to be unable to block a single strike from the girl. Don't do anything rash. I'm a disciple of the demon-controlling sect. If you dare to kill me, I'll make sure you die a horrible death. Wuda's lips trembled and his face turned pale. He had been kidnapped by a 1st-rank exalt realm girl in front of so many people. It was a great humiliation. Die a horrible death? Baijishi smiled warmly, but her pink eyes glinted coldly. Do you think so too? You've been sneaking around behind my back. Do you really think I'm easy to bully? What? The demon-controlling sect? However, after hearing Wuda's words, many of the disciples' faces changed. Everyone in the world knew something about this ancient sect. The power of demon controlling was mysterious. Even though the 5 of them were only at the exalted realm, no one knew exactly what level the imperial demon they controlled was at. How dare you, witch? How dare you cause trouble in the Azure Sky Empire? Songdi coldly shouted, his eyes filled with killing intent. Soon after, he glanced at the surrounding people, and an item suddenly appeared in his hand. The demon-controlling sect is subduing demons. Those who have nothing to do with this, please leave. It really is the demon-controlling sect. I didn't expect a prodigy from this sect to appear. That little girl is a demon? The Azure Sky Orthodoxy hated the ghost and monster races to the core. On the day of Manor Lord Daotian's lecture, the 2 races had sent prodigies to humiliate the current generation of the Azure Sky Empire. It could be said that the human race already hated the ghost and monster races even though the Azure Sky Empire had yet to conquer them. Needless to say, the Sangin brothers of the Celestial Wolf race had joined the Sky Demon and killed countless disciples. It was simply outrageous. The demon-controlling sect? You rotten fish and shrimps actually dare to call yourselves demon-controlling grandmaster? Baijishi giggled and kicked Wuda 10 feet away. He fell to the ground awkwardly and ate a mouthful of mud. Seeing this, the disciples of the various clans burst into laughter. That was right. Humans and demons had different paths. Especially in the current situation, the human race and the demon race had almost reached the point where they could not coexist. However, who would be able to reject such a cute and domineering little demoness? You 5, come at me together. If I can't beat you until you call me Grandaunt, then I, Baijishi, am not worthy to be my brother's little sister. Baijishi had always yearned for this feeling of showing off. Back in the Xingzhou continent, she had personally witnessed Ling Zhao's show off again and had long been itching to give it a try. What 1 against 7? Wouldn't that be a piece of cake? What brother and sister? Little witch, I think you're just looking for death. Songdi's eyes were gloomy, and he suddenly stepped out. In his hand, a dazzling golden spear smashed towards Baijishi. The sky shook, and the statues rose one after another. With Songdi's cultivation base of the 8th grade, this power was enough to shake a Saint Realm cultivator. Suddenly, a golden light crack filled the sky, extending for thousands of miles, and Baijishi's little face immediately showed a touch of solemnity. Oh no, this blue-clothed young man's cultivation seems to be a bit bad *SS. It turns out that it's not easy to show off. Baijishi clenched her teeth, and clenched her jade-like hand quietly. Above her head, there was a sea of blood surging. Faintly, there seemed to be a demon beast phantom stepping on heaven and earth, sheltering her under its body. Boom! The golden spear crushed down and collided with the demon shadow. Baijishi's figure suddenly flew upside down and fell to the ground. Her knees were scratched with a few blood stains. Humph! Why don't you surrender? Songdi's smile was gloomy, and he looked at the girl under him unscrupulously. Not to mention, although this little lowly was small, she still had some ups and downs. She had a kind of youthfulness like a small lotus showing its sharp horns. You forced me to do this. Baijishi's pink eyes trembled. Originally, she thought that when she showed her power and defeated these 5 bad guys, she would tell them her true identity. But she didn't expect that she would encounter such a powerful opponent as soon as she was born. The anger in her heart could be imagined. Wouldn't it be embarrassing to say her brother's name at this time? Roar. Accompanied by a demon roar, a demon wind rose in all directions in the spiritual array, and sand and stones flew, blocking everyone's sight. And in the endless demon light, a fluffy snow-white long tail suddenly pierced the sky and swept towards Song Di. You finally revealed your true body? 4 demon beasts, their strongest combat state was always when their true body was revealed. It seemed that this little witch was a lamp that had run out of oil, and it was time to fight with her life. Boom! Song Di held the spear with both hands and blocked the white tail. However, the moment the two collided, even with his cultivation of the 8th level of the Venerable Realm, he was still blasted back a few feet. His face was gloomy. However, before Song Di could react, the void in front of him suddenly stagnated. Next, tails after tails of beasts appeared. Like heavenly pillars, they engulfed his entire silhouette. 1, 2, 3, 9. A total of 9 white tails, carrying hundreds of millions of divine power and endless blood chi, almost crushed the sky and fell from the sky. Song Di was stunned. Surprisingly, there was no panic on his face at this time. Instead, there was an indescribable surprise. 9-tailed. He never dreamed that this young and cute little girl was the legendary 9-tailed celestial fox. Prehistoric bloodline, pure-blooded celestial fox. Fortune! Great fortune! The 9-tailed celestial fox was known as one of the strongest bloodlines in the prehistoric era. It was an existence comparable to the true dragon and ancient phoenix. More importantly, the 9-tailed celestial fox in front of him was only a child. As long as he could capture it today, the treasures in the Thunder Sea and the forbidden secret realm were not important. Boom! Demon splendor burst out in the sky, and the 9 fox tails covered the entire sky. Vast spiritual power swept in all directions, exploding the blue sky for thousands of miles. In the end, Song Di's figure disappeared among the 9 tails. Humph! Bai Jishi snorted coldly and reappeared in front of everyone. However, at this time, 9 fluffy white tails swayed in the wind behind her, showing her nobility. 9-tailed celestial fox? The world was silent. The faces of all the prodigies were full of absurd shock. Who would have thought that such a barbaric bloodline would appear in this chaotic world? Looking at the fear on everyone's faces, Bai Jishi's little face suddenly raised a smile. She got it. Chapter 1350. Boom! Tens of thousands of miles of void, tens of thousands of rays of light. Bai Jishi stood with her hands behind her back. She had a childish appearance, but she deliberately pretended to be an elder. But, before the smile on her face disappeared, she saw a palm slowly stretch out from the place where the demonic light spread. It was a pitch-black and old demon palm covered with golden hair. It was the size of a person. Inexplicably, a vast demonic aura swept through the world, causing everyone's face to turn cold. As everyone knew, the real trump card of the demon-controlling sect disciples was never their own combat strength, but the demonic beasts sealed in their hands. Obviously, in the face of Bai Jishi's all-out attack, Song Di finally used his most powerful move. Roar! Accompanied by a loud roar, a terrifying demon shadow that was dozens of feet tall suddenly broke through the void and rushed toward Bai Jishi. This is the mountain-splitting ape? Finally, someone in the crowd began to exclaim. Although this demonic beast's bloodline was far less shocking than the 9-tailed fox's, its realm had obviously touched the threshold of the sage realm. Its golden hair was like steel needles, standing tall and hard, causing people to feel a chill. At this time, the ape was holding a 10-foot-long divine staff in its hand. The moment it swept across, countless cracks appeared in the entire space. Bai Jishi's pretty face froze. Just as she was about to use the power of space to escape, she suddenly heard a light shout from above her head, "Activate the demon sealing array and imprison the space here." The reason why Song Di tried so hard to imprison Bai Jishi in this array was because he was worried that her power of space was too strange. Although this array was used to seal the demonic beast, it also sealed the entire space. Buzz! The remaining 4 disciples of the demon-controlling sect immediately made hand seals and used their spiritual power to activate the power of the array. Suddenly, the void rippled, and wisps of spiritual power turned into silk threads, intertwining and filling the world. Bai Jishi's pretty face was immediately stunned. At this time, she seemed to feel that her power of space was imprisoned by the array, and a trace of panic appeared in her eyes. Boom! At the same time, the divine staff in the ape's hand fell from the sky and fell toward Bai Jishi's head. Damn it! Bai Jishi clenched her teeth as her 9 tails stretched out behind her. Like a barrier, it wrapped around her figure. However, her combat strength was not above her physical body. How could she compare to this great demon whose cultivation base was close to the saint stage? Therefore, everyone only saw the moment when the two collided. There seemed to be a mist of blood rising from the white foxtail, and Bai Jishi's figure was directly smashed to the ground. Poochie! Bai Jishi struggled to get up from the ground. The blood on the corner of her mouth was glaring. At this moment, her face was filled with panic and anguish. It was supposed to be a moment for him to show off. Why was it suddenly interrupted by this monster ape? But before she could recover from her shock, the figure of the monstrous ape mountain splitter had already descended from the sky, and the staff in his hand emanated a piercingly cold golden radiance that caused the sky to collapse and everything to be crushed. Boom boom! Within the great array, spiritual might rippled. Under such a fierce attack, how could Bai Jishi, who was only at the first rank of the exalted realm, block it? Soon, her body was covered in bloody wounds, and her pink eyes were filled with grief and indignation. Little demoness, if you surrender now, you can avoid physical pain. Song Di stood in the void and sneered. At this time, the face of this demon-controlling sect disciple was already filled with excitement and pride. Today, as long as he could capture this 9-tailed celestial fox and train it a little, it would definitely become his real trump card in the future. In your dreams, Bai Jishi snorted coldly, and there was a touch of stubbornness on her pretty face. Okay. Then I will beat you until you obey. Song Di's eyes were gloomy, and he waved his hand lightly. The monstrous ape mountain splitter once again turned into a golden shadow and rushed towards Bai Jishi. You really think I am afraid of you? Bai Jishi's eyes suddenly overflowed with immortal light. Her entire body was directly wrapped in endless divine light. The brilliance that filled the sky rushed out from her body. It was pure and bright, as if the stars were sprinkling down, and it was inexplicably filled with a sense of mystery. A wisp of ancient aura gradually recovered, and layers of demonic chi gushed out. In that brilliance, a white fox demon that was dozens of feet in size stood in the air, and the 9 white tails behind it swayed gently, revealing an ancient fierceness. The monstrous ape mountain splitter, which was originally several times larger than Bai Jishi, suddenly seemed insignificant, and the power of the divine staff in its hand was directly broken by Bai Jishi's claw. The bloodline of ancient times, the pure-blooded celestial fox. At this moment, Bai Jishi finally showed the majesty of an ancient great demon. Not bad, this is the demonic power that a 9-tailed celestial fox should have. However, Song Di was not surprised at all. Even if Bai Jishi's realm was low, her bloodline could be said to be supreme. Although the monstrous ape mountain splitter also contained a wisp of ancient demonic bloodline, compared to the 9-tailed celestial fox, it was like heaven and earth. What are you waiting for? Let's end this quickly. Song Di raised his head, glanced at the 4 demon-controlling sect disciples who were controlling the array, and shouted in a deep voice. At this time, the surrounding mountain peaks were already surrounded by the geniuses of the various sects who were watching the show. Although the demon-controlling sect had a long history and was ranked supreme. However, who knew if there would be some blind fool who also took a fancy to this playful and cute little demon girl and fought with him for her? Yes, senior brother. The four disciples looked at each other, and the soul consciousness in their eyes surged. A demon shadow appeared in the void in front of each of them. With their strength, the demonic beasts they controlled were also in the 7th or 8th stage of the venerable realm. If it was in the past, these demonic beasts with inferior bloodlines would not be a threat to Baijishi. But at this time, the 5 demons attacked at the same time, and the power was really terrifying. Waves of majestic majesty pressed down, the mountains collapsed, and the heavenly Tao no longer existed. The vast demonic aura was like a long cloud, sweeping across the land within 100 miles. And Baijishi was completely at a disadvantage under the siege of the 5 demons. Her body was covered in wounds, and she looked quite miserable. Come in. Seeing that the time was ripe, a sinister smile suddenly appeared on Songdi's face. A golden chain appeared in his hand, and he waved it casually, and it snaked toward Baijishi. Feeling the power of imprisonment flowing in the air, Baijishi's pretty face froze. She waved her 9 tails together, trying to suppress the 5 demons. But, at this moment, the golden chain turned into a golden torrent, like the Milky Way pouring down, surging with incomparably thick divine power. Thousands of golden rays fell from the sky, directly binding Baijishi's figure, and the attack of the 5 demonic beasts blocked all of the former's retreat. But, at this moment, the sound of a sword suddenly resounded in the distant void. Chapter 1351. Hearing the sword hum, a wisp of astonishment appeared on everyone's faces. Then, before they could react, a green ancient sword suddenly pierced through the void and destroyed the sky. It shattered the ancient array and landed on one of the 8th-grade Exalted Realm demonic beasts. Pucci, an 8th-grade martial monarch realm beast, did not even have time to struggle before its body was split into 2 halves from the middle. Whoosh! Blood and internal organs fell from the sky and dyed the desolate valley red. As for Song Di and the remaining 4 monster beasts, they were all stunned. They turned their heads and looked up at the sky in a daze. Clang! 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 Then another 4-sword hum rang out. Shocking sword chi pierced through the sky. 4 ancient swords that shone with 7-colored light tore through the sky and beheaded the 4 demonic beasts. Moreover, even though the sky-splitting divine ape reacted quickly and raised the staff in its hand, it was still cut in half by the ancient sword. Gulp! At this moment the world fell silent. Everyone was dumbstruck as they stared at the 5 demonic beasts that were so ferocious just a moment ago and were beheaded in the blink of an eye. For a moment, they felt that it was somewhat absurd. 5 demonic beasts that were close to the peak of the Exalted Realm were killed by 5 sword. At this moment, everyone had an illusion that if the 5 demonic beasts were standing in a line, the person who attacked would not need to use 5 sword. He could kill them all with 1 sword. It was too terrifying. Even a sage would not be able to kill 5 8th or 9th grade Exalted Realm demonic beasts so easily. However, it was difficult for a supreme being to enter the heavenly lightning absolute land. Otherwise, they would be punished by the heavenly lightning. Who was it? Only Baijishi, at this time, turned back into her human form and looked at the distant sky proudly. There, a golden dragon carriage came through the sky. A burly figure like a ferocious beast sat in front of the carriage and drove the carriage like a servant. A peerlessly handsome young man in black clothes sat indifferently on the jade chariot, and there was a rare wisp of indifference on his face. This is the black-cloved immortal with his hair tied up. It's Master Ling Xiao. It's Master Ling Xiao. the entire barren mountain instantly fell into an uproar. Everyone's faces were filled with indescribable shock. Although many of them had heard of the young master of the Ling people, Ling Zhao's heaven-defying swordsmanship. However, when they saw the 5 divine swords hovering in the air, they still felt a chill run down their spines. The sword immortal of the age. With Ling Zhao's natural talent in the sword Dao, I'm afraid only those 2 sword immortals of this generation are qualified to compete with him, right? There were 2 Azure Sky sword immortals in this generation. One of them was precisely the Dragon Abyss Sword Tomb's Xiang Tian, and he was ranked in the sequence. His Violet Dawn sword was capable of annihilating all enemies in the world. The other person was a woman. She was quite mysterious. She had once challenged the Sword Tomb of the Dragon Abyss Sword Tomb by herself and defeated the 7 true disciples of the Sword Tomb. In the end, she fought Xiang Tian to a draw. It was only because from the beginning until the end, this woman had never opened her mouth to speak a single word. Thus, she was respectfully called the Silent Sword Immortal. After this battle, the Speechless Sword Immortal entered the ranks, and even firmly suppressed Xiang Tian, receiving praise from the people of the world. However, since that battle, the Speechless Sword Immortal seemed to have disappeared from the world and never appeared again. However, her attainments in the Sword Dao were recognized as the strongest in this generation. Of course, this was all in the past. Since the birth of Master Ling Xiao, he had dominated the world with his Sword Dao, and no one could match him. Even the 6 great monsters of the Divine Feather Clan could not shake the young master's sword intent at all. With his talent, even the heavenly Dao Divine Steel could not withstand his power and finally shattered. Therefore, in the eyes of many geniuses, Ling Zhao's attainments in the Sword Dao were probably higher than Xiang Tian and the Speechless Sword Immortal. Moreover, the people of the world said that with the arrogance of these 3 people, there would be a shocking battle sooner or later to prove the invincibility of their Sword Dao. Young Master Ling Xiao? At this time, Song Di's face was already dull, and his eyes were faintly flickering with a trace of gloominess. The thing he was most worried about still happened. Just now, the reason why he asked his 4 junior brothers to attack at the same time was to capture Bai Jishi as soon as possible and end this dispute. Otherwise, once someone coveted the 9-tailed's beauty and talent and competed with him, it was bound to cause many unforeseen events. Of course, if it was an ordinary genius of the sect, Song Di really did not take them seriously. His sister was a rare genius of the Imperial Demon sect in 1,000 years and had a high reputation in the sect. There was even an elder who once said that as long as his sister's cultivation stepped into the saint realm, she would become the youngest elder in the history of the Imperial Demon sect. Her status was second only to the young master in the sect. But Ling Xiao, the only young master of the Taigu Ling people in 100,000 years. With this identity alone, not to mention Song Di, even if the young master of the Imperial Demon sect was here, he would absolutely not dare to be the slightest bit rash. Still not coming over? Ling Xiao did not even look at the 5 disciples of the Imperial Demon sect. Instead, he glanced at Bai Jishi indifferently. The 9-tailed celestial fox, who was still high and mighty, suddenly turned into a stream of light and threw herself into Ling Zhao's arms. Her 9 fox tails swayed gently like a kitten that had seen its master, playful and cute. Hiss! Seeing this scene, a touch of shock appeared on everyone's faces again. With this little fox's talent, once it was known by those old monsters of the Demon Clan, they would definitely treat her as a pearl in their palm. Once such a bloodline grew up, it was likely to directly change the pattern of the Azure world. But, looking at her posture at this time, she was simply a spiritual pet in the hands of Lord Ling Xiao? What a cute spiritual pet! No wonder that Master Ling Xiao, who had always been gentle and elegant, was so angry that he killed 5 demons in a row. It turned out that this disciple of the Imperial Demon sect dared to capture the young master's pet. Gulp. Song Di swallowed his saliva fiercely. His face was already extremely pale. If today Ling Xiao just took a fancy to this little fox, at worst he would give it to the young master to sell him a favor. But at this time, it seemed that this nine-tailed celestial fox was the young master's pet? Brothers, can I still be saved? Waiting online, it's very urgent. Young master, it's a misunderstanding. This is a misunderstanding. Song Di's lips trembled slightly, but the moment his voice fell, he saw the young man on the jade chariot suddenly raise his palm and gently wave it toward him. Buzz! Suddenly, the wind and clouds in the sky shook. A bright spiritual seal condensed out of thin air, crushing the void, and pushed down toward Song Di with an unparalleled momentum. The terrifying aura began to recover, and even the spiritual array that shrouded the void exploded at this time. The brilliance was dazzling, and the divine splendor was unrestrained. The whole desolate valley suddenly shattered and collapsed. As smoke and dust filled the air, Song Di's face finally raised a touch of extreme resentment. Ling Xiao, you are too overbearing. Chapter 1352. Rumble. Above the sky, a divine seal of spiritual light crushed down. It was densely covered with Tao runes and filled with killing intent. It was obvious that Ling Xiao's seal didn't give Song Di the slightest chance of survival. It was precisely because of this that this genius of the Imperial Demon sect finally let go of all his worries. Kill! Song Di shouted angrily, his face ferocious. Then, golden light overflowed from his hand, evolving into tens of thousands of runes, and colliding with the spirit seal. Golden light surged, and divine pressure covered the area. Even without the Imperial Demon sect, Song Di's cultivation base had reached the 8th rank of the Venerable Realm, not to mention that he still had 4 junior brothers standing behind him. However, what made Song Di feel a little strange was that as he attacked, there was not a trace of fluctuation behind him. Song Di turned his head with a dull expression, only to see that his 4 junior brothers were all standing there awkwardly, without the slightest intention of attacking Ling Xiao. What a joke! Hu Qing Tsang didn't know that Lord Ling Xiao had the ability to control the sky. What's more, with their strength, how could they compete with the young master? Song Di's sister was indeed the true disciple of the Imperial Demon sect master and was extremely talented. But the person in front of him was the young master of the Taigu Ling people, whose status was comparable to the young master of the realm Lord Hall. What was the difference between beating him and courting death? Boom! The spirit seal crushed down, and with the power to suppress the heavens, it shattered Song Di's attack. The universe reversed, and tens of thousands of Tao intent gathered in one place, directly smashing the figure of the Imperial Demon sect disciple into the barren mountain. At the critical moment, a wisp of spirit light suddenly bloomed outside Song Di's body, faintly revealing the divine power of the Sage Realm. But even so, his figure was still completely shattered along with the barren ancient peak. Gulp! Seeing this, the remaining 4 disciples of the Imperial Demon sect immediately knelt in the void and cried out loud, Young Master, it's not my fault. It's all Song Di's fault. He bewitched us to attack. Cough cough, you. Hearing what the 4 of them said, a resentful voice suddenly came from the mountain rock. Amidst the smoke and dust, Song Di walked out covered in blood, his eyes full of horror and resentment. If he hadn't used a life-saving talisman given to him by his sister, he would have been killed by Ling Xiao's palm strike. The young master of the Ling people was really overbearing. He did not give anyone a chance to explain. Ling Xiao, my elder sister, Song He, is the true disciple of the Imperial Demon sect. If you kill me... Before Song Di's voice faded, the young man on the jade chariot sent out another palm strike. Endless runes surged like a sea, shocking everyone's hearts. Lord Ling Xiao, However, right at this moment, a loud and deafening dragon roar resounded in the sky. Soon after, a young man in white suddenly appeared in the sky. Beneath his feet, a fiery red flood dragon stretched for hundreds of miles, filled with boundless ferocity. Ling Xiao slightly clenched his fist and looked up at the young man standing on the head of the fiery flood dragon with a calm gaze. Ninth grade Venerable Realm, but the fiery flood dragon under his feet was surrounded by a wisp of Saint Realm aura. It was actually a Saint Realm demonic beast. Young master, please calm down. Song Di is young and ignorant and has offended you. I hope that you can spare his life for Changyue's sake. Senior Brother Changyue. Senior Brother Changyue. Seeing the newcomer, whether it was Song Di or the other 4 Imperial Demon Sect disciples, a trace of relief appeared on their faces. Senior Brother Changyue's full name was Changyue Wui. He was the grandson of the Imperial Demon Sect's great elder. His Changyue clan had been the Imperial Demon Sect's elders for generations, and there were several Supreme Being experts among their ancestors. Moreover, the Changyue clan was said to be proficient in hundreds of demon languages. Even demonic beasts with low intelligence who couldn't speak human language could be tamed by them. Although the fiery flood dragon was not a real dragon, its flames were said to be capable of incinerating 10,000 creatures, causing 10,000 demons to fear it. Of course, if it was an ordinary disciple who provoked Ling Xiao, Changyue Wui wouldn't easily come forward. It was just that Song Di's sister was the most talented woman in the Imperial Demon Sect. She was unparalleled and had always been admired by many disciples. Changyue Wui was no exception. But, just as Changyue Wui's voice fell, Ling Xiao's palm suddenly pressed down. A divine seal that covered the sky immediately smashed down, pressing towards the joyful Song Di. Crimson flame. Changyue Wui's eyes narrowed slightly, and he immediately shouted softly. The fiery flood dragon under his feet suddenly rose into the air, trying to stop the spiritual seal. But, just as the raging flames around its body rose and its figure wriggled out, a terrifying figure suddenly appeared above its head. Roar! A terrifying roar like that of a demon beast immediately sounded. Outside Xionghuan, 100-meter-tall bear shadow stood in the air, roaring towards the sky. The sky demon's figure also pressed down. He stretched out his palm and directly crushed the fiery flood dragon from the sky, smashing it into the barren mountain. Boom! At the same time, the spiritual seal fell and enveloped Song Di's figure. This time, there was no trace of spiritual light blooming on his body. His entire life was shattered by Ling Xiao's palm. Boom! Smoke rose into the sky. Everyone looked at the terrifying figure who crushed the 100-meter-tall fiery flood dragon to the ground with a touch of shock in their eyes. Saint Realm! This figure wearing battle armor and with a body as sturdy and majestic as a demon beast turned out to be a Saint Realm powerhouse. It should be known that even in those supreme forces, the Saint Realm was also a symbol of the status of the current elder. Even in some ordinary clans, the Saint Realm powerhouse was already the foundation of the clan. However, this tall man who casually suppressed the fiery flood dragon turned out to be the coachman of the Ling people's young master. Who do you think you are? Ling Xiao looked calmly at Changyue Wui and gently stroked Bai Zhixi's long tail with one hand. He had heard of the demon taming sect before. It was mysterious and powerful. Although it didn't have many disciples, it was said that there were 3,000 demon-taming sect disciples in the sect. However, in Ling Xiao's eyes, there was no force in the Azure Sky realm that was worthy of his concern. Not to mention a mere 9th-rank Venerable Realm powerhouse without any luck, even if it was a Saint Realm powerhouse, once Ling Xiao's main body stepped into the Saint Realm, he could easily kill him. You! Changyue Wui's expression turned cold, especially when he saw the fiery flood dragon that was struggling under Xionghuan's suppression. His eyes flashed with a trace of intense fear. However, today, Ling Xiao killed Song Di in front of him. If he left now, once this matter reached Song He's ears, how could he establish himself in the demon-taming sect in the future? Master Ling Xiao, it turns out that you're just a playboy who kills innocent people. I won't allow you to say that about Big Brother. It's not what you think at all, it's... Bai Jishi's small face froze, and a trace of resentment flashed in her eyes. Today's matter was all caused by her. If your son's prestige was tarnished because of this, then she would really die 100 times. So what if I killed him? Chapter 1353. Kill? So what? The whole world was dead silent. Everyone looked at the black-clothed youth, who suddenly spoke and interrupted Bai Jishi. Looking at the gentle smile on his face, they only felt a chill rise all over their body, but inexplicably they felt their blood boiling. Domineering. Direct. Everyone had seen what had happened just now. Song Di and the 4 demon-controlling sect disciples set up a formation in an attempt to capture and tame the 9-tailed celestial fox. Even if they did not know that this demon was related to the young master, this action was still a provocation to Ling people and the young master. Moreover, this celestial fox addressed the young master as brother? It seems that her relationship with the young master was not as simple as a spirit pet. However, facing Chang Yuwui's anger, Lord Ling Xiao did not even bother to explain. Although the sentence, "So what if I kill her," sounded unreasonable, everyone who knew the whole story felt an inexplicable reverence. Protecting was a kind of moral conduct. Especially in this immortal path, it could be considered lucky to be protected by someone. At this time, many people looked at the 9-tailed celestial fox in Ling Xiao's arms, revealing a trace of envy. The pure-blooded 9-tailed celestial fox was indeed extremely talented. Especially now, demon veins in the ordinary realm of the mortal world were really rare. As long as this little girl grew to the supreme being realm, she would be a person who could shake the world. However, growth needed time. Just like today, if it was not for Lord Ling Xiao, this little girl's fate would be to become Song Di's demon servant. You are simply arrogant to the extreme. Ling Xiao, if you have the ability, fight with me. Chang Yuwui clenched his teeth, his face pale. It was obvious that he was extremely angry. Fight with you. Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. He slowly stood up and stood on the jade carriage. Then, without saying a word, he stepped out and rushed towards Chang Yuwui. Hum! Behind him, 5 immortal swords hung above his head, emitting an ear-piercing buzz. Chang Yuwui took a deep breath and lowered his head to look at the scarlet flame flood dragon that was suppressed by Xiong Huan with one hand. His eyes suddenly flashed with a trace of gloominess. The demon-controlling sect's appearance today was meant to intimidate the Azure continent and restore its ancient prestige. Although he did not dare to really hurt this young master of the Ling people, at the very least, the dignity of the demon-controlling sect was not to be trifled with. What's more, this Ling Xiao had casually killed Song Di. He was simply too arrogant. Hum! At this moment, Chang Yuwui clenched his fist, and a vast amount of spiritual energy rose around him. It turned into a crimson dragon spiritual shadow out of thin air and charged towards Ling Xiao. The cultivation method of the Imperial Demon Clan's powerhouses was extremely mysterious. It could be combined with the spiritual power of the Imperial Demon Clan, allowing them to unleash the magical powers of the demonic beast. This Crimson WRM spirit seal obviously contained a strand of the might of true flames. Even though it couldn't compare to spirit flames, it was absolutely not something that an ordinary Exalt Realm cultivator could resist. This is what you're relying on? Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. With a thought, the 5 immortal swords above his head suddenly bloomed with piercingly cold light. The might of the great Tao spread out, and the 5 immortal swords revealed the aura of 5 completely different laws. Time passed, and the void stagnated. Endless darkness covered the clouds and swallowed all light. Before the Scarlet Jiao spiritual image could even touch the wisps of soaring firmament, it was shattered by the supreme sword intent. Chang Yuewui's expression changed drastically, and a trace of regret suddenly appeared in his heart. Just now, he was only thinking about how to win the favor of junior sister Song He, but he neglected the fact that this young man in front of him not only had the background of looking down on the Azure continent, but also had the reputation of being invincible in this generation. Brainless villains were more or less like this. I don't believe. Chang Yuewui gritted his teeth. No matter what, he couldn't back down now. He immediately changed his hand seals and let out an inhuman roar towards the sky. Roar! At this time, the crimson WYRM that was suppressed by Xiong Huan with one hand suddenly surged with raging flames. A terrifying spiritual might that could be seen with the naked eye rose up, like a curtain of fire that burned the sky, enveloping Chang Yuewui's figure. Instantly, the heavens and the earth fell silent. Numerous flaming whirlwinds surged out, filled with extremely violent flame energy, directly burning and collapsing the space in an area of 50 kilometers. This is the demon-controlling sect's remarkable ability, the Spirit Demon Contract. On the mountain peak there was an uproar. Although the experts of the demon-controlling sect had not appeared for a long time, everyone was still quite wary of this remarkable ability. Using a human body to inherit the demon meridian and use the demon beast's divine power. This method was strange. Rip! Just as everyone was exclaiming, a palm suddenly reached out from the curtain of fire that filled the sky and tore the void apart. A figure surrounded by crimson flames immediately appeared in front of everyone's eyes. At this time, Chang Yuewui was obviously much more burly than before. Flames danced in his eyes, divine runes flowed, and even the aura around him was mixed with a trace of holy will. Ling Xiao, you killed my demon-controlling sect's disciple. Today I will teach you a lesson. Chang Yuewui roared angrily and pushed his hands horizontally. Flaming spiritual seals immediately condensed and poured toward Ling Xiao like a curtain of rain. The temperature of the entire world suddenly rose. Above the firmament, flames swept out, and the void cracks spread for thousands of miles, instantly burying Ling Xiao. What a terrifying attack! As expected of the demon-controlling sect's prodigy, Lord Ling Xiao has met his match. Buzz. However, just as everyone's eyes trembled as they looked at the place where the flames were surging, they saw a ray of clear light leisurely blooming. Immediately after, a sword force that was hundreds of feet long instantly tore through everything, destroying the flaming whirlpool and falling from the sky with the power to destroy the world. The disdain on Chang Yuewui's face had not dissipated, and it completely froze at this time. Jiao Dragon Transformation! An angry roar came from the void, and the brilliance outside Chang Yuewui's body suddenly lit up. His entire body expanded by several times, and his body was covered with dense red scales. In particular, the two curved horns on the top of his head were filled with an indescribable fierceness. He hurriedly raised his hand, wanting to use his Jiao body to block the sword force. However, what was frightening was that the moment the sword force slashed down, Chang Yuewui's entire arm was cut off at the shoulder. The rain of blood sprinkled down, and it was shocking. Buzz! However, at this moment, Chang Yuewui's eyes suddenly flashed with an extreme fierceness. His figure directly pierced through the void and appeared in front of Ling Xiao. Then, he clenched his fist and punched down. Heaven and earth trembled, and cracks rushed out from under his fist. From afar, the entire sky seemed to be unable to withstand the power of this punch and shattered with a crash. Obviously, after fusing with the Crimson Jiao bloodline, Chang Yuewui's physical body had reached an extremely terrifying level. And this punch was probably enough to kill someone at the peak of the Exalt realm. Chapter 1354. Boom! The wind and clouds in the sky suddenly changed. Chang Yuewui's punch was like a meteorite falling from the sky. Under the fist print, the precepts of fire rose one after another, burning everything. Seeing this, everyone's eyes were mixed with a hint of fear. Especially at this time, the wisp of saint stage aura that spread out from the demon-controlling sect's genius was even more shocking and inexplicably terrifying. No one would have thought that after Ling Xiao cut off one of his arms, not only did Chang Yuewui not retreat, but he also provoked his ferocious nature. This sudden punch was simply too unexpected. However, in the face of this punch that contained the will of death, Ling Xiao's face was not the slightest bit moved. In fact, there was even a trace of mockery. The physical body of a demon beast was indeed more powerful than that of a human. However, to Ling Xiao, Chang Yuewui's action was no different from courting death. Ling Xiao raised his hand and punched without using any cultivation method or precepts at all. Boom! There was a sudden clap of thunder and divine power. The expression on Chang Yuewui's face froze almost instantly. At this time, his only remaining arm was directly shattered by Ling Xiao's punch. His blood and bones disappeared together. Even his entire body seemed to have been penetrated by a surge of divine power and shattered into a cloud of blood mist in the air. The entire mountain peak was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. All the geniuses from the various sects stared at the falling blood mist in horror as they swallowed their saliva. Invincible, immortal beauty. With the combat strength of this young master of the Ling people's combat strength, there was probably no one in this generation who could be his match. Unparalleled swordsmanship, terrifying physical body, young master seemed to have no flaws at all. How ridiculous! Roar! On the mountain peak, the red flame dragon let out a sorrowful cry. However, before it could struggle, Xiong Huan punched it again and smashed its head into pieces. Gulp! Seeing this, everyone's body trembled and their respect for Ling Xiao deepened. Even a carriage driver had the strength to smash a saint single-handedly. The foundation of the Taigu Ling people was truly terrifying. Hum! Right at this moment, a golden light suddenly rose from the center of the lightning field and pierced through the sky. There seemed to be a phantom of a Buddha in the air, revealing an indestructible Buddha nature. However, what was slightly strange was that there was a bloody aura spreading from the Buddha's body. It was emitting a strange and terrifying aura. It's been born. The supreme treasure has appeared. Go! All of a sudden, rays of divine light bloomed in the void above. As for the geniuses of the various sects who had been intimidated by Ling Xiao, they turned into streaks of light and rushed madly towards the center of the lightning field. Although, with the young master of the Ling people here, their chances of getting the treasure were slim. However, it was also good fortune to be able to share some of the soup. Brother Bai Jishi stood in front of Xianyuan Weiyang and the others. There was a rare trace of fear on her pretty face. Today, she had just come out of seclusion, and it seemed like she had already caused a huge disaster for Ling Xiao. That so-called demon-controlling sect was obviously from the Azure Sky sect. If they were to find trouble with Ling Xiao afterwards, he was afraid that, "You only know how to cause trouble for me." Ling Xiao shook his head and looked up at the sky. He naturally wouldn't put a mere demon-controlling sect in his eyes. However, Songdi's threat before his death made Ling Xiao a little wary. It was obvious that Songdi's sister, Song He, should be the true genius of the demon-controlling sect. Ling Xiao would never keep such a threat alive. Let's go and take a look. Ling Xiao waved his hand and put Xiong Huan and the dragon carriage into the realm. The closer one was to the center of the lightning field, the greater the pressure on the Sage Realm and Supreme Realm expert. What's more, Xiong Huan's current vitality was in that corpse pearl. Once he attracted the heavenly thunder, his corpse intent would definitely be exposed. He brother, you're not angry anymore. Bai Jishi leaned over to Ling Xiao's side and hung on his arm with a smile. At this time, Ling Xiao could also see that the girl's luck had risen to 15,000 points after her cultivation entered the venerable realm. Moreover, the bloodline of the nine-tailed celestial fox had never appeared even in the extreme south. It seemed that this girl's ancestors were most likely from the immortal realm. "I'll deal with you later." Ling Xiao smiled, took Bai Jishi's jade-like hand, and headed toward the center of the lightning field. Behind them, Xianyuan Weiyang and Yao Guang followed closely, but the expressions on their faces were different. At this time, the red lotus between Yao Guang's eyebrows became more and more dazzling, as if it was watered by blood. It was demonic and mysterious. There was a faint trace of uneasiness in her eyes all the time, as if the Buddha and demon in the center of the lightning field were inextricably linked to her. What was going on? In the sky above the Forbidden Land, multicolored light shone everywhere. Figures descended from the sky and landed on the sea of lightning in the center of the lightning field. Of course, as they went deeper, the power of heavenly lightning in the lightning field became more and more turbulent. Endless lightning runes crisscrossed the sky, and if one was not careful, they would be sucked into them and be struck by heavenly lightning. Ah! Miserable screams could be heard incessantly. It was obvious that some unlucky fellows had died under the might of the lightning. Ling Xiao and the other three descended from the sky. Looking at the endless sea of lightning before them, their eyes were somewhat solemn. At this time, everyone could see that there were 4 figures sitting cross-legged around the sea of lightning. Buddhist light surged around them, covering the clouds and the sun. As for the divine pillar that reached the sky, it pierced through the bottom of the sea of lightning. It seemed to be sealing some divine object. "This is," Ling Xiao pretended to be surprised and turned to look at Yao Guang. "Experts from the Brahma Holy Land?" "Amitba. This aura is indeed my Brahma Holy Land's cultivation technique. However, this little monk has never seen these 4 people before." Yao Guang shook his head with a puzzled expression. Of course, according to the Western Buddha Lord's original plan, he had sent a disciple to quietly open the restriction here and take away the 9 luminaries' relic and the Buddhist lotus. However, the one who had come in place of the golden ape was Wu Nye. He had followed Ling Zhao's instructions and deliberately delayed the opening of the restriction so that many heavenly prides of the various sects and clans would come. His purpose was naturally to give Yao Guang an opportunity to enter the devil path. "You don't know them?" Ling Xiao gave Yao Guang a meaningful look, and the corners of his mouth suddenly rose into a playful smile. Then, he turned to look at one of the figures, and the soul runes in his eyes rippled. Wu Nye immediately raised his head and let out a furious roar. The Buddhist light around his body turned into a shocking Buddhist charm. It intertwined with the auras above the heads of the other 3 Buddhist disciples and suppressed the golden light pillar. Boom! Suddenly, the sea of lightning surged and surged, containing a destructive and violent aura. The devil will that had been suppressed at the bottom of the sea finally broke through the seal. It was like a devil god had descended and enveloped the entire sea of lightning. "What is that?" Seeing this scene, everyone's expression changed. Some of the heavenly prides of the ancient sects, who were closer to the sea of lightning, were directly corroded by the devil will and entered the devil path. Damn it! What did those bald donkeys release? Chapter 1355. This is bad. I'm afraid there's a demonic creature sealed under the sea of lightning. They're trying to break the seal and release the demon. Angry voices rang out from the shore of the sea of lightning. All the prodigies retreated pathetically and looked at the 4 Buddhist figures sitting cross-legged in the distance. At this time, everyone was somewhat shocked. Why would these Buddhist disciples, who had always been merciful, take the initiative to release the demonic creature sealed in the sea of lightning? What the hell is going on? Ling Xiao narrowed his eyes, and his expression became more and more solemn. At this moment, a few more figures whizzed over from the horizon. The leader of the group was a beautiful woman in a silver robe. Her eyes, in particular, were silver white. They resonated with the sea of lightning and formed a power of their own. Beside her stood two young men. Their auras were not weak, but their gazes towards Ling Xiao contained a strand of vigilance. Behind the three of them, the four demon-controlling sect disciples who had followed Song Di were trembling with fear. They seemed to be discussing something with the woman. Of course, with Ling Xiao's spirit perception, he could still hear their conversation even from several miles away. This woman was Song Di's elder sister, the true top prodigy of the demon-controlling sect's younger generation, Song He. However, to Ling Xiao's slight surprise, after learning that Song Di and the others had died at his hands, Song He did not show any killing intent. She only glanced at Ling Xiao and then turned her head to look elsewhere. Interesting. This woman's thoughts are much deeper than those of ordinary prodigies. However, although she did not show any hostility to Ling Xiao at this time, it did not mean that Ling Xiao would let her go. As long as they went deep into the Sea of Lightning to search for the treasure, Ling Xiao would find an opportunity to kill all the demon-controlling sect disciples. After all, the living were the variables. If they died, it would only be a pity. I'm possessed. Run. The demonic creature has come out. The Sea of Lightning instantly fell into chaos. The disciples whose minds had been disturbed by the devil will suddenly attacked their fellow disciples beside them. In an instant, spiritual light blossomed and blood sprayed out, forming a scar with the demonic energy above his head. Ling Xiao frowned and took a step forward. His figure immediately appeared in the midst of the chaos. He casually extended his hand and three beams of sword light pierced through the void, killing the few clan disciples who had been eroded by the demonic will. The world fell silent. Everyone looked towards the bottom of the Sea of Lightning with fear and surprise. Obviously, they had never imagined that such a ferocious creature would be hidden in the azure sky impasse ground. The four of you, please stop. Ling Xiao stood with his hands behind his back, his black clothes fluttering in the wind. At this moment, his face was clearly filled with anger as he looked coldly at the four figures sitting cross-legged. Amitabha, the four of us are under the orders of the Buddha Lord to retrieve the Buddhist token. We hope that all benefactors will leave quickly to avoid unnecessary trouble. Wu Nie's eyes were shining with golden light, and his tone was quite calm. Ling Xiao had already instructed them to say this. Today, not only were they going to take away the treasure at the bottom of the Sea of Lightning, but they were also going to completely blame the Brahma Holy Land for the Buddhist sect's hidden demon. What? Where did the demon come from? Haha, are you looking down on me? Buddhist token? Ling Xiao frowned and suddenly clenched his fist. The 3,000 fleeting moments suddenly flashed with cold light, freezing the void and time. Grandmaster, I don't care what you Buddhists want to do, but if you release this demon today, don't blame Ling Xiao for being impolite. Young master is indeed the light of righteousness. The crowd suddenly burst into an uproar. The many prodigies who had fled turned back and stood in the distance. Obviously, they also wanted to see what the Buddhist disciples were up to. The Buddhist sect actually released a demon. What are their intentions? Yes. Once this demonic will breaks out of the seal, I don't know how many people will die. Stop them. Amitabha, if there is no greed, how can there be trouble? Wuni slowly shook his head, not moved at all. Hearing this, many disciples' faces turned red, and the killing intent in their hearts became stronger. That's right, if they weren't greedy for the treasure in the Sea of Lightning, how could they appear here today? In the end, the cause and effect were in their own hand. Amitabha, are the four senior brothers disciples of the Brahma Holy Land? Yaoguang's figure appeared beside Ling Xiao at some point, and her pretty face was dignified. The Buddhist brilliance on the four people in front of her was indeed from the Brahma Holy Land's Bodhi Heart Sutra. But why had she never seen these four senior brothers? Amitabha Arhat, stop. This has nothing to do with you. Wuni sighed softly, and the remaining 3 Buddhist disciples didn't say much. They didn't know about the demonic being suppressed in the Sea of Lightning. It was just that, when the Buddhist Lord entered the world, he must have set up such a method for a profound purpose. Out of trust in the Buddhist sect's holy monk, the three of them didn't have a trace of doubt at all. Taking out this thing and returning it to the Spirit Mountain would be the merit. If you don't stop, don't blame me for being impolite. Ling Xiao turned his head and glanced at Yaoguang, only to see that at this time, the Arhat's eyes were also somewhat dignified, and the spirit sword in his hand suddenly bloomed with a biting cold light. Amitabha, 3 junior brothers. Wuni raised his head and glanced at the divine pillar that reached the sky, and a trace of killing intent suddenly flashed in his eyes. At this time, the seal had been broken, and the 3 Buddhist lords' spies were useless. And with Ling Xiao's temperament, it was naturally impossible for him to let them leave here alive. Therefore, he only needed to give Ling Xiao a suitable reason, and the 3 of them would bear the sin and be suppressed here by the young master. This method even made Wuni feel a trace of fear. However, the destruction of the Buddhist sect was his only faith. He had prayed for Buddha for 100 years, but he had to watch his beloved die in Buddha Mountain. This hatred had almost driven Wu Nye mad. Now, he only needed to implicate the Brahma Holy Land and the demons according to the young master's wishes, and he could easily push the Buddhist sect to the brink of destruction. Then, as long as the time was ripe, Ling Xiao would raise his arm and call for countless forces to kill their way to the Spirit Mountain and personally expose the hypocrisy of the Buddhist sect. Boom! Vast Buddhist light swept away the demonic qi. The 3 figures that were originally sitting cross-legged suddenly stepped out of the golden Buddhist realm and stood in front of everyone. They were 3 figures in different clothes, and one of them was a half-step sage demon beast. The remaining 2 had reached the peak of the venerable realm, and their bodies were full of Buddhist nature and majestic appearance. Good. Since you are so stubborn, today I, Ling Xiao, will enforce justice on behalf of the heavens and send you to Nirvana. Ling Xiao shouted angrily, and his righteous aura surged into the sky. Around him, thunder and lightning spread, and the rhythm of the Tao was awakened, and the void for thousands of miles shattered. And his figure resolutely rushed toward the 3 Buddhist sect disciples. Amitabha beside him, Yaoguang's beautiful eyes narrowed, and for a moment, she was at a loss. She naturally trusted her master to the extreme. However, the actions of her 4 senior martial brothers were truly contrary to the principles of Buddhism. What is going on? Young master, let me help you. Chapter 1356. Buzz! Above the sea of lightning, the void vibrated. A bloody aura surged like a raging dragon and soon reached Ling Xiao's side. Xianyuan Weiyang was dressed in white. She was untainted by dust and looked like a fairy. At this moment, there was not a trace of fear or panic on her face. Instead, there was a hint of determination. Ling Xiao's action at this moment could be said to be unparalleled loyalty. Although she could not understand why these Buddhist disciples insisted on releasing the great demon sealed in the Sea of Lightning, but looking at the demonic will lingering in the sky, it was very likely that the demon would cause chaos once it was released. Although Xianyuan Weiyang did not have a good impression of the Qing Tsang sect, the young master was worthy of her sacrifice. Brother, I will help you too. Bai Jishi stepped forward. Her 9 fox tails covered the sky and the sun. Her figure shuttled back and forth in the void. She was ethereal and illusory. Leave that half-saint demonic beast to me. You guys be careful. Ling Xiao nodded gently. At this moment, Wuni's Buddhist light shone brightly. It turned into a cage of heaven and earth and enveloped him. Junior brothers, you must stop them. I will open the seal. Along with a furious shout, golden light rose from the center of the Sea of Lightning again. Just looking at the demonic will mixed in the light was enough to make one's heart palpitate. Everyone, break the light pillar. Don't let the demonic will spread. Ling Xiao glanced at the heaven-piercing divine pillar with shock and fury, and then he took the lead and charged towards the half-saint demon beast. Hearing this, many disciples on the shore of the Sea of Lightning hesitated. However, when they saw the black-clothed figure in the void charging forward without a care for his own safety, their hesitation quickly disappeared. Attack! Many figures soared into the sky. The spiritual treasures in their hands shone brightly. They smashed toward the divine pillar of demonic will. However, the moment the spiritual treasures collided with the divine pillar, the originally stagnant demonic will seemed to be stimulated. It turned into a tide and swallowed everyone. Woo-woo! In just a short moment, more than 10 disciples of the ancient sects were corroded by the demonic will and completely lost their minds. Wu Nye and Ling Xiao revealed a wisp of a faint smile when they saw this scene. Ah! The sounds of battle instantly resounded, and Ling Xiao's figure finally appeared in front of the half-saint expert. On the surface, this demon looked no different from a human. He had a muscular body, but his Buddhist nature and demonic qi coexisted in a vast and surging manner. There was a string of white bone Buddhist beads hanging around his neck. It looked quite evil. The Buddhists had always advocated education without discrimination. No matter if it was a demon or a devil, as long as they put down their butcher's knife, they would be guided by Buddha and cross to the other side. Obviously, this demon wasn't a good person in the past. It only abandoned its demonic nature after meeting the Buddha Lord and became the guardian of the Thunder Sea. "Speak, who are you?" Ling Xiao slashed out with his sword. The sound was like thunder, and it had a domineering aura that could intimidate demons. "I'm Yuanqi. I advise you not to ruin the great plans of the Buddhist sect for your own selfish reasons." Yuanqi put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. Above his head, a Dharma form with angry eyes stomped on heaven and earth. It blocked Ling Xiao's sword attack and remained as still as a mountain. The Buddhist sect's supernatural powers are indeed terrifying. Ling Xiao's eyes were clear. He suddenly took a step forward and punched out. The wind whistled and the surrounding space instantly collapsed. Yuanqi also punched out and collided with Ling Xiao. Boom! Heaven and earth lost their color as demonic winds blew everywhere. However, what was shocking was that with just one punch, Yuanqi and the Buddha statue above his head flew out and smashed into the Thunder Sea. Ling Xiao stood in the void. His black robe fluttered, and he looked like an immortal. At this moment, he could see that Xianyuan Weiyang and Bai Jishi had already used their supernatural powers to fight with the remaining 2 Buddhist disciples. As the blood sea surged, Xianyuan Weiyang waved his jade-like hand and forced the Buddhist disciple to retreat. After all, Bai Jishi's cultivation had just entered the venerable realm. She could only use the Space Tao Law to deal with the Buddhist disciple. Boom! Under Ling Xiao, the Thunder Sea suddenly surged. A figure broke through the thunder light. The Buddha light around him was dazzling. He directly punched at Ling Xiao's angry seal. At this moment, behind Yuanqi, a pair of brown wings covered the sky and stretched for hundreds of miles. As for his speed, it was so fast that it reached an astonishing level. Even with Ling Xiao's divine soul perception, he only saw a ray of golden light leisurely blooming and arrived in front of him in the blink of an eye. However, at this moment, there was no trace of fear on his face. The moment he stretched out his hand, he directly grasped Yuanqi's fist in his hand. "A demon is a demon. Do you think you can save all living beings by wearing a kasaya?" Ling Xiao smiled coldly. Blood qi gushed out of his body. Layers of strange scales covered his arms under the black robe. Then, as Ling Xiao's palm tightened, Yuanqi's face suddenly turned red and then pale. As for the fist that was held by Ling Xiao, it actually shattered into pieces. Before Yuanqi could react, Ling Xiao punched out again. With a huge force, it smashed toward Yuanqi's head. Mighty Vajra, immovable as a mountain. Yuanqi's face changed drastically. He was no longer as indifferent as before. As he chanted the Buddha's name, the Dharma that stood above his head suddenly descended from the sky and wrapped his body. The Buddha light bloomed with dazzling brilliance. Outside the Dharma, there were countless Buddhist scriptures circulating and manifesting, containing an immovable and indestructible force. Clang! The moment Ling Zhao's fist landed, there was suddenly a loud sound of a yellow bell between heaven and earth. It was thunderous. However, this time, the Dharma did not shatter. It only dimmed for a moment. Ling Zhao's eyes turned cold. It was obvious that he was quite surprised. This Buddhist body tempering remarkable skill was indeed somewhat miraculous. It was actually able to block his punch. However, it was only somewhat miraculous. Buzz! Outside Ling Zhao's body, strands of golden light and dragon aura began to recover. Vaguely, a dragon shadow that was thousands of feet long seemed to wriggle out of his body and stand tall in the sky. Ling Zhao's palms were immediately covered with layers of golden scales. Then he smashed out. Clang! 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 The terrifying power of qi and blood extended endlessly. At this moment, Ling Zhao was like a real dragon that had taken human form. The moment his fist landed, spiritual power surged and the void rippled for thousands of miles. Yuanqi's Dharma Laksana did not have the strength to fight back at all. Ling Zhao's hammer fell from the sky and crushed an ancient mountain. But, before Yuanqi could stand up from the ground, Ling Zhao's figure descended like a golden dragon with an unparalleled domineering force. Boom! Under his feet, mountains and rivers collapsed, heaven and earth turned upside down, and all living things died. It was too terrifying. At this moment, everyone looked at the figure that had transformed into a real dragon. There was a touch of true reverence in their eyes. They could only feel their souls trembling and on the verge of collapse. Boom! In the end, Ling Zhao's figure landed on the ground and stepped on Yuanqi's head. Smoke and dust filled the sky. The ancient mountain that had collapsed was destroyed in a breath. Everything fell silent. Chapter 1357. Crack! A crisp sound suddenly came from the depths of the smoke and dust. Immediately after, a series of footsteps were heard. A black-robed figure slowly stepped out and looked up at the two Buddhist disciples, who were still fighting with Xianyuan Weiyang and Bai Jishi. Endless Buddhist brilliance surged between heaven and earth, but at this moment, a look of horror appeared on the faces of the two disciples. That was because they saw that under the barren mountain, Yuan Qi's head had been directly shattered and his vitality had been extinguished. Ling Zhao raised his palm, and the 5 immortal swords suddenly turned into flowing light and pierced through the sky. Clang! Shocking sword qi gushed out, and above the 5 swords, each emitted immortal brilliance and slashed down from the sky. Between heaven and earth, there was a supreme qi rising, going against the immortals. The great Tao trembled and thousands of Taos were obliterated. Whether it was the Buddhist brilliance or the demonic will, they were all destroyed by the sword qi. Endless divine elephants floated in the void where the 5 swords slashed through. The wisps of sword will seem to be able to easily split heaven and earth. The rules of order, time, void, and even the era of life were all destroyed by the sword will at this moment. Amitabha! In the next moment, a Buddhist chant was heard, and the divine shadows of dragons and elephants floated around the 2 Buddhist disciples, trying to stop the ancient swords. Golden light sprinkled down as if it was made of real gold. A dragon opened the sky, and an elephant stepped on the ground, containing the true power of suppression and dominance. However, at this moment, darkness suddenly bloomed in Ling Zhao's eyes, and his pupils instantly turned pure black. In a breath, the world in front of the 2 Buddhist disciples turned dark, and there was no light and no sound, as if it was the origin of demons. Then, everyone was dumbstruck when they saw that the 2 Buddhist sect disciples who originally had the upper hand were actually instantly pierced through by the sword intent, causing an endless rain of blood to spray down. Yao Guang's eyes finally slowly closed at this moment, and his face was filled with grief. She could not figure out why the Brahma disciples would appear in the northwest wasteland. She also could not figure out why they wanted to release the demonic creature in the Thunder Sea. Of course, given the current situation, since Ling Xiao wanted to stop this devil from being born, killing them was the fastest way. This was because every single moment of delay would cause a disciple of an ancient sect to fall into the path of the devil and be consigned to eternal damnation. Moreover, the sins of the Buddhist sect would increase correspondingly. However, why didn't the demonic will in the divine pillar cause her to feel any fear? Instead, she felt a faint sense of familiarity. That's right, when Buddhist disciples roamed the world, they would never carry a spirit artifact like the divine voice transmission talisman. In other words, other than their natal Buddhist artifacts, they didn't have any extra spiritual artifacts on them. Once you believe in karma, all laws are void. Why aren't you stopping? Ling Xiao slowly walked over and stood at the edge of the Sea of Lightning. He raised his head and looked at Wu Nie, who was still sitting cross-legged in the Golden Buddha world. At this moment, the demonic monk suddenly stood up and revealed a brilliant and playful smile. He stretched out his palm, and the 4 Buddhist prayer beads that were maintaining the spell realm suddenly rose into the air. They were like 4 suns, illuminating the entire sky. Then, the golden light reached its peak and shattered with a loud bang. On the divine pillar that was originally golden in color, demonic runes suddenly appeared, shining with a black light. Vaguely, the shadow of a blood-colored lotus appeared in the void, revealing an astonishing demonic nature. Woo-woo! Heaven and earth whimpered, and the entire Sea of Lightning suddenly boiled and turned into a sea of devils. Meanwhile, Wu Nie's figure suddenly and strangely disappeared from the spot. Not good. That devil is about to be born. Run quickly. The great devil is about to be born. Damn it! Brahma Holy Land! Suddenly, everyone screamed and fled, using all their strength to rush into the distance. As for those disciples who reacted slightly slower, they were directly sucked into the sea by the demonic will in the divine pillar and disappeared. How could this be? Yaoguang was at a loss, and his eyes were filled with fear. If the devil at the bottom of the Sea of Lightning were to be born today, the Brahma Holy Land would definitely fall into eternal damnation. Buzz! Just as Yaoguang was pondering, another buzzing sound came from the void. They saw Ling Xiao's figure floating in the air, surrounded by divine light, forming a great world, blocking the demonic will. Seeing this scene, everyone's expression changed again, especially the sweat on Ling Xiao's forehead, which made people see the responsibility of a righteous path's outstanding talent. Young master, let me lend you a hand. The panic in everyone's eyes calmed down once again. It was as if the successor of the Ling people in front of them had a special quality that made people abandon fear. As long as he was here, immortals and devils were fearless. Buzz! Rays of divine light bloomed in the sky, turning into spiritual energy that surged up and down, and finally poured into the divine light barrier in front of Ling Xiao, temporarily imprisoning the demonic will. However, at this time, Ling Xiao's expression did not relax at all. He lowered his head and looked at Yaoguang, obviously waiting for this bodhisattva to give him and the world an explanation. Amitabha, this little monk. Forget it, now is not the time to talk about right and wrong. This demonic will is getting more and more terrifying. I'm afraid it can't go on like this. Ling Xiao shook his head. His seemingly unintentional action temporarily helped Yaoguang out of the situation. Young master, this heavenly lightning extreme land is a place where even supremes can't enter. With our strength, it's impossible to fight against this demonic will. What should we do? Everyone lamented, their eyes filled with helplessness. There's no other way. Ling Xiao sighed softly and looked up at the endless demonic will lingering in the divine pillar, but he was curious. Looking at the purity of this demonic will, although it could not be compared to his sky demon will, it could be said to be terrifying, even comparable to lonely skies. Could it be that Yaoguang's background was also a great demon from the 9 heavens? Although Ling Xiao did not know how the Buddha entered this heavenly lightning extreme land and sealed the lotus heart and the 9 luminaries Sarira, it was obvious that he paid a great price. Otherwise, he would not have sent his disciples here this time, giving Ling Xiao an opportunity to take advantage of. Young master, looking at the vicissitudes of life that suddenly appeared around Ling Xiao, everyone's eyes narrowed and they suddenly had a bad feeling. If we want to stop this disaster, we can only go to the bottom of the Thunder Sea, find the source of this demonic will, and seal it again. Ling Xiao's eyes were clear and cold. His black robe was covered in mysterious golden patterns that outlined the sun, moon, mountains, and seas. Hearing this, a look of horror appeared on the faces of the group of clan disciples. Even Song He and the other disciples of the demon-controlling sect revealed a trace of fear in their eyes. Go to the bottom of the Thunder Sea? Not to mention the devil intent contained within the divine pillar, merely the sea of lightning that was filled with heavenly lightning was something that ordinary Exalt Realm experts couldn't step foot into. Young master, this Thunder Sea is dangerous. What if we don't return? If we don't return, then we don't return. Everyone, I will leave this place to you. I will enter the Thunder Sea to investigate. Ling Xiao suddenly turned around and looked at the many heavens favorites behind him. The calmness on his face made many heavens favorites tremble and tears welled up in their eyes. What is righteousness? Even if I die, I will go. Young master, you are the only one in the 9 heavens. Chapter 1358. Young master, I'll go with you. Xianyuan Weiyang walked to Ling Xiao's side with a determined look on her face. I'll go too. Weiyang Zhishi, stay here and suppress the demonic intent. This time, Ling Xiao shook his head and rejected Xianyuan Weiyang and Zhishi. After all, what he was going to do later was to force Yaoguang to completely turn into a demon. Buddha Cloud, if you don't enter it, who will? This process was obviously not suitable for children. Bringing these 2 women down would be a hindrance. Of course, with Ling Xiao's understanding of Yaoguang, she would definitely go down with him. Whether it was the Buddha's heart or the Bodhi's heart, it was still the human heart. Ling Xiao was best at controlling the human heart. Some chess games you would unknowingly fall into them. Moreover, the fortune in the Thunder Sea originally belonged to Yaoguang. The curiosity in her heart was the last bit of strength that pushed her into the abyss. Ah Yao, today I will make you cry. Amitba. Since this matter was caused by the Buddhist sect, I will accompany Master Ling Xiao to explore the Thunder Sea. As expected, just as Ling Xiao took a step forward, Yaoguang suddenly chanted a Buddhist name and walked to his side. At this moment, Yaoguang was also very curious about where the demonic intent came from and why it was mixed with such pure Buddha nature. This, young master, don't worry. The glazed Buddha body that I cultivate can withstand the demonic intent of the Thunder Sea. Yaoguang's eyes were sincere and had a hint of anticipation. In the end, Ling Xiao did not refuse and took the lead to walk into the depths of the Thunder Sea. There was dead silence between heaven and earth. All the geniuses of the ancient sects and the prides of the big clans bowed respectfully with tears in their eyes. That's right, Yaoguang entered the Thunder Sea to atone for the sins of the Buddhist sect. However, what sins did the young master commit to bear such danger for the common people? However, the moment Ling Xiao and the other 2 figures disappeared, Song He and the other 2 geniuses of the demon-controlling sect looked at each other and quietly followed them. Although the demonic will of the lightning sea was terrifying, the Buddhist charm contained within it was equally vast and mysterious. It was obvious that there was a great fortune hidden at the bottom of the sea of lightning. Ordinary people feared the sea of lightning, but she didn't have the slightest bit of concern. This was because her demon taming and spirit communication already contained the world's most extreme lightning laws, making her impervious to all evils. The originally churning lightning sea only regained its calm after the few figures disappeared. However, at that moment, everyone had grave expressions on their faces. What was the Brahma Holy Land's intention? Who was the one who sealed such a terrifying demonic creature or even an evil spirit here? All of a sudden, everyone felt an aura of conspiracy coming at them. Clearly, there must be a shocking secret hidden in Buddhism. On the other side, Ling Xiao and Yao Guang went deep into the sea of lightning. Along the way, they saw a vast expanse of lightning liquid. Even with the realm of Ling Xiao's divine soul, it could only cover an area of 100 miles. It was impossible for him to explore further. "We can't go on like this." Ling Xiao stopped, looked at the sea, and whispered softly. "Ba, young master, how about this? The Arhat will go east and I will go west. I will leave a divine soul mark on the Arhat. Once we find the sealed demonic will, we can use the mark to send a message." Ling Xiao's eyes were clear, but his expression was extremely grave. The moment the demonic will wasn't sealed, the disciples above the Sea of Lightning were in danger of being eroded by the demonic will. Every death was a sin for the Brahma Holy Land. "Okay." Yao Guang nodded without hesitation. Buddhist light bloomed around his body, and golden lotuses bloomed under his feet. Even with her cultivation, it was difficult for her to move in the Sea of Lightning. However, compared to ordinary prodigies, Buddhist cultivation methods had strict requirements for the physical body. Therefore, this Sea of Lightning was just another trial for Yao Guang. It wasn't until Ling Xiao could no longer feel Yao Guang's aura that the grave expression on his face dissipated, revealing a touch of coldness. At this time, he could feel that not far behind him, 3 auras were quickly approaching the center of the Sea of Lightning. Moreover, the auras of these 3 people all contained a great force of thunder. If Ling Xiao's guess was correct, they should be the 3 people from the demon-controlling sect. Now that the sky lightning sea curtain could block the prying of divine souls, Ling Xiao no longer had any worries. As long as Song He didn't die, he couldn't be at ease. A woman who knew how to endure and size up the situation was far more terrifying than those brainless extras. The hatred of killing his brother was irreconcilable. Ling Xiao smiled, and his figure instantly disappeared from where he stood. That's right, in this vast sea of lightning, to find the 9 luminaries' relic and the lotus core was tantamount to looking for a needle in a haystack. A villain was not protected by the heavens, so it was naturally difficult for him to find good fortune. However, Yao Guang was different. The lotus core was originally the companion item of this Western Buddha. Ling Xiao believed that there must be some special connection between the two. As long as Yao Guang found it, Ling Xiao only needed to appear at the right time, and this game of chess would be complete. The Buddha Lord's spy was dead, and even death couldn't wipe out his crimes. Yao Guang's joining of the demon-controlling sect would completely prove that the Buddhist sect had evil intentions and colluded with the demon-controlling sect. From the beginning to the end, Ling Xiao was a righteous man who killed the demon-controlling sect for the world. Even if the Buddha Lord had doubts in his heart, he would never suspect him. He didn't want to take the blame for this, and couldn't get rid of it at all. With mercy in his heart, he could save the demon-controlling sect. Little did he know that the joy and sorrow of this world were originally not connected. As expected of Junior Sister Song, even saints can't go deep into the Thunder Sea, but Junior Sister Song can walk as if it's flat ground. Yes, in the entire demon-controlling sect, except for the young master, no one in the younger generation can compare to Junior Sister Song's talent. At this time, outside the Thunder Sea, 3 figures stepped on the sea curtain and sped over. Song He's silver robe almost merged with the heavenly thunder, especially her silver eyes, which surged with thunder patterns and thousands of rays of divine light, seemed to be in harmony with the Thunder Sea. Senior brothers, you flatter me. Song He's tone was soft and her face was gentle, but there was no trace of emotion in her eyes. Song Di's death had already filled her heart with anger. But who was Ling Xiao? He was the successor of the ancient clan, who really stood at the peak of power in the Azure Realm. Not to mention that she was an ancient clan genius, even the young master of the demon-controlling sect was not qualified to compare with him. Of course, if this Ling Xiao was just a good-for-nothing, Song He had thousands of ways to secretly kill him. But Ling Xiao's talent was unparalleled in the world, and he already had the supreme aptitude to dominate a generation. Even if Song He was confident that in this Thunder Sea, no one under the Saint Realm could compete with her, but when she saw the young man's eyes, she felt her delicate body tremble, and there was a kind of chilling oppression. Haha, junior sister, that Ling Xiao is rude and unreasonable. He killed junior brother Song Di. Now that he has gone deep into the Thunder Sea, why don't we take this opportunity? Yes, junior sister. Even if he is dead, no one will know that we killed him. Otherwise, once he returns to the Azure Realm, it will be difficult to kill him. The two disciples of the demon-controlling sect looked at each other, and gloomy killing intent flashed in their eyes. Chapter 1359. Be careful with your words, senior brothers. Song He frowned slightly, and there was anger on her pretty face. Today, she came to the Thunder Sea to look for opportunities. She did not want to cause trouble. Ling Xiao's strength was really frightening. She did not want to reveal her killing intent too early before she was sure that she could kill him. The road to immortality was unpredictable. She had a trump card, but it did not mean that others did not. Moreover, he was a young master of the primeval race. This, haha, junior sister is just so kind-hearted. The two demon-controlling sect disciples smiled awkwardly. There was no cost in talking. Moreover, in front of the goddess of their dreams, who would not want to show off their strength. Not to mention a young master of the Ling people, even if the old ancestor of the Ling people was not present today, they would still dare to kill him. Junior sister, look, what is that? Just as the three of them were rushing toward the depths of the Thunder Sea, they suddenly saw an ancient sword flickering with blood-red light quietly standing not far away. The ancient sword was 3 feet long and completely blood-red. There were demonic patterns lingering on it, and sword intent was everywhere. It had a momentum that could split the sky and split the sea. Demonic treasure. It's a demonic treasure. The two demon-controlling sect disciples were shocked, especially the area around the sword that was crushed into nothingness by the demonic intent. The might of the sword was simply too shocking. The two of them did not hesitate at all and directly rushed towards the ancient sword. Senior brothers. However, at this moment, a hint of panic flashed in Song He's eyes. However, before she finished speaking, the two people rushing toward the ancient sword were suddenly enveloped by a formation. This is... The two of them looked at each other, and their faces turned cold. Spiritual power surged around them, and two demonic beast shadows flashing with lightning immediately appeared. Buzz. However, before the two demonic beast shadows landed, a buzzing sound suddenly rang out. Then, the two of them were stunned to see that the evil sword standing in the Thunder Sea suddenly lit up with an extremely bright scarlet light. It directly tore through the lightning curtain and pierced through it. Their eyes turned cold. Just as they were about to circulate their spiritual energy, they found that their entire bodies felt as if they had fallen into a swamp. They could not move at all. On the other hand, 10,000 blood runes were emitted from the blood sword. They turned into 100 zhang long sharp light that sliced the two disciples of the demon-controlling sect and the peak martial highness realm beast into pieces. Not far away, Song He's beautiful eyes were solemnly watching everything in front of her. There seemed to be thunder patterns gathering on her skin, forming a universe of their own. Only when a series of low and heavy footsteps came from afar did Song He raise her head to look, only to see a tall and slender figure slowly walking over from the sea curtain. An extremely gentle smile appeared on his peerlessly handsome face. Ling Xiao. Song He's eyes narrowed slightly, and her jade-like hands unconsciously clenched. Even with her perception of lightning, she could only vaguely sense that there were some strange fluctuations in the space around the blood sword. But before she could investigate clearly, her two senior brothers rushed into the formation. It was obvious that this evil sword was not a creation hidden in the sea of lightning, but had been purposely placed here by someone. But Song He still could not figure it out. She clearly did not show any hostility towards Ling Xiao. Why did this young man want to kill them all? Of course, if Song He was just an ordinary background character, perhaps Ling Xiao would not have spent so much effort. Unfortunately, she had 7,000 points of fate on her. Although this providence wasn't a threat to Ling Xiao now, Ling Xiao didn't care about it at all. However, with luck, it meant that there were more variables. With Ling Xiao's temperament, how could he allow any variables to exist? Crushing all uncontrollable factors in one's hands was the quality of a villain. Young master, you've come at the right time. This evil sword's power is extraordinary. With my strength, I'm afraid it will be difficult to subdue it. Why don't you help me suppress this evil thing? Song He's eyes flickered, and she suddenly said to Ling Xiao with a solemn expression. From the looks of it, even with the help of the Sea of Lightning, she might not be a match for this young master of the Ling people. His methods were simply too strange and terrifying. Even if her two senior brothers had mistakenly entered the formation, two young talents of the 9th level of the Venerable Realm and two demonic beasts at the peak of the Venerable Realm were enough to contend against a Saint Realm expert. However, they could not even withstand the power of Ling Xiao's sword. Therefore, Song He did not have the slightest advantage if she fell out with him. She might still have a way out if she played dumb. Oh! Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly, and the smile on his face became even more gentle and brilliant. With Song He's temperament, as long as she did not die, she would definitely achieve something. At the very least, it seemed that she was far calmer than some people with heaven-defying fate. She knew how to endure. Ling Xiao stepped forward, walked into the formation, and held the blood jade evil sword in his hand. When he first met Jun Mo Wu, he had taken a fancy to her sword heart and this evil sword. It was simply wishful thinking for a girl with no background and a weak cultivation to want to avenge her father and destroy the Western Pole Buddhist sect. Therefore, when she joined the sword sect to get close to Ling Tian, she was willing to do anything. Because of this, Ling Xiao was certain that she would take the risk. Only when a person has desires would they be manipulated. Do you think she was too careless to take the initiative to die? Little did she know that from the moment Ling Xiao crushed the sword chi of the Dragon Abyss, defeated Ling Tian, and showed hostility to Jun Mo Wu, this girl had already fallen into his trap. Ling Tian's distance also indirectly showed Ling Xiao's attitude towards her. Jun Mo Wu was a smart girl, so smart that she knew how to use everything around her. In her eyes, the sword master of the Dragon Abyss and Ling Tian were merely tools for revenge. Therefore, when she saw Ling Xiao that day, she knew she would not be able to live. Perhaps she could get a promise in exchange for obedience, but resisting would only lead to worthless death. Do you understand? Ling Xiao held the blood jade evil sword in his hand, and his eyes were calm. Long before this, he had been guarding this place and set up the ancient universe formation. With the cultivation of the two disciples of the demon-controlling sect, once they entered the formation, how could they fight against him? However, what surprised Ling Xiao was that Song He could sense the ripples of the formation outside the blood jade evil sword. She was indeed a person of fortune. This feeling was mostly unrelated to the perception of the soul. It was purely fortune. Miss Song, I'm afraid you've misunderstood. Of course, even if Song He managed to escape, Ling Xiao would not give her the chance to do so. On the contrary, the more ignorant and humble she acted, the more determined Ling Xiao's killing intent became. "This sword is mine." Ling Xiao raised his head and smiled brightly. However, this smile made Song He's body shiver and shiver. He was completely different from the righteous young master who dared to disregard his own life and death to slay demons. At this moment, Ling Xiao was like a true demon. Every word and action of his was filled with endless demonic nature. Suddenly, Song He had a misconception in her heart. Could it be that the demonic traces in the Thunder Sea were originally this young master's means? However, he had painstakingly led the geniuses of the ancient sects here. What was his purpose? "Young master, what do you mean? My demon-controlling sect has no enmity with you. Why do you want to kill us all?" Song He put her hands behind her back. Thunder patterns circled around her 5 fingers. It was obvious that she was ready to attack. "Your disciples captured my maidservant. Is this reason enough?" Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. The moment he stepped out, the divine elephant rose. "Ling Xiao, you're overbearing." Song He scolded. The thunder around her suddenly shot up into the sky. The endless thunder sea rolled over. Vaguely, the shadow of a demonic beast seemed to be hidden in the sea curtain. It bit down on Ling Xiao's head. Boom boom! Tens of thousands of lightning waves fell from the sky, completely enveloping Ling Xiao's figure in an instant. However, just as Song He turned around and was about to escape, she suddenly heard several loud sword sounds coming from the depths of the sea curtain. Then, she was stunned to see 10 ancient swords with different powers pierce through the thunder sea in an instant. They fell with the power to slash the sky. Chapter 1360. Shocking sword intent poured out, shattering the sea of lightning. A black-robed figure walked out from the sea of lightning with his hands behind his back. Although there was no fluctuation on his body, the sea of lightning within 100 miles seemed to have stopped, not daring to get close to him. The 10 swords slashed down, and the terrifying aura was like a sea of stars crashing down. Time and space, lightning and flames, and all kinds of rules gathered to form a torrential sword aura. To put it bluntly, just one of the swords could be said to be invincible in the venerable realm. 10 swords. Song He's eyes were filled with shock. She did not dare to hesitate at all, and thunder patterns appeared on her body. The entire sea of lightning was boiling. Bolts of lightning poured into Song He's body, and her figure expanded to a height of 10 zhang under the power of the lightning. She was like an ancient god, ready to punish the heavens. Especially her eyes, which were pure silver without a trace of impurity, revealed an indescribable coldness. Boom! Then, she stretched out her hand, blocking out the sun. The sea of lightning shattered, and countless thunder patterns trembled and roared, pressing down on the 10 swords. Boom! However, the moment the two collided, Song He let out a scream. Her outstretched hand was directly penetrated by the 10 swords, and it shattered into a sky full of thunder and lightning. Her figure even staggered back 100 steps before she once again stood on the spot. Song He's face was gloomy. Even though she had used her strongest technique, the spiritual Thunder Dharma body, it seemed that it was still difficult to fight against the young master of the Ling people. Invincible! She was ranked 12th in the Azure Sky 100 Heroes, and they were fighting in the depths of the Sea of Lightning. She should have had the advantage. However, she still could not beat him. They were not on the same level at all. Of course, if Song He knew that the person standing in front of her was only Ling Xiao's pure purple Qi Dao body, her mind would be shattered in an instant. Master Ling Xiao, I can let bygones be bygones. I swear on my Dao heart that I will never be your enemy. Why don't we both take a step back and part ways? Song He's pretty face was ice cold as she shouted softly. However, just as she finished speaking, she saw Ling Xiao's figure suddenly rise into the air and directly press down with his palm. A thunderous palm print suddenly appeared. Tao laws coiled around it, and there were thousands of runes. Furthermore, compared to the thunder and lightning surrounding Song He's body, the thunder source contained in this palm print was even purer and more terrifying. Boom! Even though Song He was already prepared and had raised her remaining lightning palm, she was still crushed to the ground by the palm. Even the lightning glow around her body had quietly dimmed at this moment. Crack! The crisp sound of broken bones quietly resounded. Song He spat out a mouthful of blood, his face filled with despair. Ling Xiao, you've gone too far. At this moment, Song He finally understood that no matter how much she begged and begged, the young master of the Ling people was determined to kill her today. As such, they could only fight to the death in order to have a chance of survival. Thunder Spider Blood's sacrifice of 3 souls. Accompanied by a roar, a wisp of blood strangely appeared in Song He's pure silver eyes, as if they were demon eyes. As for her body, it was wrapped by tens of thousands of lightning threads, turning into an enormous lightning cocoon. Vast chi and blood surged, and the sea of thunder within 100 miles shook, and the demonic power rose in all directions. Ling Zhao's eyes narrowed slightly, and he suddenly waved his hand. The 10 ancient swords once again emitted a piercingly cold light, tore through the sea of thunder, and fiercely stabbed toward the thunder cocoon. Song He's combat strength was several times stronger than Chang Yuewui's. At this moment, Ling Xiao could faintly feel that her aura was slowly rising, and there were signs that she was about to break into the Saint realm. By sacrificing her life, Song He was clearly prepared to fight to the death. However, Ling Xiao did not want to give her this opportunity. Buzz buzz! The 10 swords buzzed, and purple chi fell to the bottom of the sea. Ling Xiao stood on the sea with his hands behind his back, and coldly looked at the 10 ancient swords, which carried the power to destroy the Great Path era, ruthlessly stabbed into the thunder cocoon. There were no blind spots, and there were no gaps. However, what was surprising was that there was not a trace of blood seeping out of the thunder cocoon. Seeing this, Ling Zhao's eyes became colder, and he lifted his foot to step toward the thunder cocoon. At this moment, countless cracks suddenly appeared on the thunder cocoon. Song He's figure once again appeared in his line of sight. At this moment, Ling Zhao's 10 swords were all dodged by her in a twisted posture. Song He's entire body was in a strange twisted posture, and she was extremely soft. Moreover, what was even more surprising was that 8 flashing thunder arms suddenly extended from Song He's shoulders and abdomen, and there was thunder on each arm, which contained a terrifying violent power. Whoosh! In the next moment, Song He did not waste any more time. She suddenly stomped her feet on the ground, and her figure merged with the sea of thunder, and she turned into a wave. Obviously, after seeing Ling Zhao's attainments in the way of the sword, this daughter of Providence who had merged with the power to control demons chose to engage in a hand-to-hand fight with Ling Xiao. Boom boom! Her 8 arms hung down, and thunder ran. Under Song He's fist, the void directly collapsed, and endless cracks appeared. Behind her, a spider shadow of 1,000 feet appeared in the sky, like a pair of thunder wings, and it was as fast as lightning, revealing supreme demonic power. Tens of thousands of thunderbolts gathered in one place, and they roared toward Ling Xiao to suppress him. However, in the face of this attack, Ling Zhao's face still did not change in the slightest. Purple chi rose around him, and it evolved into endless avatars. Then, Ling Xiao also threw out a punch to meet Song He's 8 arms head-on. Boom! The terrifying divine power almost shattered the sea curtain. The roar of the Great Path spread for tens of thousands of miles, and there were tens of thousands of divine shadows, which fell along with Ling Zhao's fist. Crack! At the moment when the 2 figures collided, the sound of 8 broken bones was heard in unison, and there was no trace of surprise at all. Song He was sent flying again, and her eyes were filled with disbelief and fear. However, this time, Ling Xiao did not give her any time to breathe. The moment he took a step forward, his figure had already swept over Song He's head. No, I can't die here. Song He's rationality had been shattered by Ling Xiao's power. The spider shadow behind her suddenly opened its huge mouth, and a silver-white thunder waterfall was spat out. Wherever the thunder waterfall passed, the universe was in chaos, and tens of thousands of daos were obliterated. However, Ling Xiao had no intention of dodging at all. He suddenly clenched one hand, and the samsara demonic blade suddenly tore through the air, and it actually split the thunder waterfall in half. And his figure finally appeared in front of Song He, about 10 feet away. No, no. I beg you, only a dead person will keep a secret forever. Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. The demonic blade in his hand slashed out horizontally, and instantly pierced through Song He's heart. However, at this moment, a sinister and vicious smile suddenly appeared on her face. Chapter 1361. Ling Xiao narrowed his eyes and instinctively felt a chill run down his spine. However, right at the moment when he stepped back and wanted to distance himself from Song He, her 8 broken arms suddenly bound him like chains. Ling Xiao was stunned, but before he could react, he saw Song He's elegant and beautiful face suddenly pressing down on him. Ling Xiao was completely stunned. It was obvious that this woman's tongue contained a deadly poison. Even if I die, I'll drag you down with me. However, what made her feel strange was that Ling Xiao did not show any signs of being poisoned. Instead, he had a sinister smile on his face. How is this possible? Song He's pretty face froze, and her eyes flickered with a touch of dense shock. The deadly poison in her body came from the demon-taming lightning spider. 1 drop was enough to kill a sage. However, this young man, who was only in the venerable realm, was not affected at all. In fact, he even looked like he was enjoying it. Boom! In the end, Song He could not figure out what went wrong. She only felt a gust of wind whistling toward her. Her head was directly smashed by Ling Xiao's punch. Beat. Congratulations to the host for killing the daughter of Providence. You have gained 7,000 luck points and 70,000 villain points. Ling Xiao's expression did not change in the slightest when he heard the system notification. Song He's shrewdness was even more sinister than Jun Mo's. A woman like her would definitely become the most sinister and ruthless opponent if she had the chance. From the moment she concealed her killing intent, her fate was sealed. Buzz! Suddenly, an ear-piercing buzzing sound came from the depths of the Sea of Lightning. The sea turned into a whirlpool, destroying everything. Have you found it? Ling Xiao narrowed his eyes, but the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. Whether it was the 9 luminaries Sarira or the Lotus Heart, they were the best fortunes of Buddhism. If Yaoguang did not submit, then these 2 treasures would be the opportunity for Ling Xiao to comprehend the Buddha nature. At this moment, in the depths of the sea, Yaoguang looked at the open rainbow treasure box in front of him in astonishment, as well as the flickering Buddhist seals around it. Boundless demonic intent engulfed heaven and earth, dyeing the entire sea region pitch black. It was obvious that the demonic creature in the treasure box was the source of the demonic will God pillar. However, for some reason, Yaoguang did not feel the slightest bit of resistance towards this devil will. Instead, he felt a sense of familiarity. What's going on? Just as Yaoguang stretched out his hand and was about to take out the demonic creature from the treasure box, a black-clothed figure suddenly appeared from the distant sea. You found it? Ling Xiao walked on the sea with an indifferent expression. Yaoguang, on the other hand, retracted his hand somewhat guiltily and softly chanted Buddha's name. Amitabha, young master has come at the right time. The pattern on this treasure box does seem to be related to Buddhism. Are you sure this demonic creature is not from the Brahma Holy Land? Ling Xiao looked at Yaoguang with a puzzled expression. In the entire Azure continent, the only Buddhist Holy Land was the Brahma Holy Land in the West Pole. Yao Guang had to bear this blame even if he did not want to. Amitabha, this is indeed the rainbow glass box of our Buddhist sect. However, this little monk did not hear Master mention this demonic creature in the lightning sea. Yao Guang shook his head. He also had some doubts in his heart. Forget it. No matter what, let's seal this demonic creature first. Ling Zhao's eyes were gloomy. A wisp of soul consciousness quietly probed the rainbow treasure box. However, the moment his soul consciousness touched one of the golden Buddhist lotuses, the world in front of him suddenly changed. The world inside the lotus? Ling Zhao was stunned. He raised his head and looked at the world in front of him. He saw that this place was pitch black. Endless darkness shrouded the earth as if it was a forbidden land. Just as Ling Zhao was about to walk forward, a chill suddenly appeared in his heart. Then, he suddenly turned his head. In the darkness behind him, he saw a graceful figure standing strangely in the distance. It was a woman in blood-red clothes. Her long hair was casually draped in front of her like a waterfall. Her face was white and beautiful. It was suffocating. In between her eyebrows, a blood-red lotus was shining brightly. It added a bit of demonic charm. Ling Zhao's expression turned cold. Only then did he realize that the blood-red woman in front of him looked exactly the same as Yao Guang. Yao Guang with long hair was so stunning that Ling Zhao could not recognize her at first glance. However, what made Ling Zhao a little surprised was that Yao Guang's eyes seemed to be confused and unclear. However, when she looked at him, there was a trace of resentment. Ling Zhao frowned slightly. At this time, he could guess that this blood-red figure was Yao Guang's demonic nature. Back then, the Buddha Lord sealed the demonic nature in her heart here. He wanted to use the 9 luminaries relic and the power of the Sea of Lightning to completely refine it. However, he did not expect that after hundreds of years, the demonic nature was not completely destroyed. However, it seemed that there was a lack of consciousness. You're finally here. You're here to save me. Right? Yao Guang's red lips were slightly pursed. Tears quietly fell from her eyes. However, just as she was walking lightly toward Ling Zhao, Buddhist scriptures suddenly lit up at the end of the world. It was like thunder shaking one's mind. Then, countless Buddhist scriptures bloomed with golden light and fell from the sky, trapping Yao Guang's figure on the spot. It could be seen that the power of light contained in the Buddhist light was a kind of torture for Yao Guang. At this moment, her beautiful face was flickering with extreme pain. However, this pain was quickly replaced by joy. It was as if Ling Zhao was the only one left in her eyes. Yao Guang continued to walk slowly but firmly toward Ling Zhao. The corner of her mouth curled up into a faint smile. She was shy and expectant. Ling Zhao only frowned at the crazy woman in front of him. He really did not know if the person she was waiting for was him or someone else. If it was Ling Zhao or the Sky Demon, then who was she? At this time, Ling Zhao did not emit any demonic nature at all. How did this woman recognize him? Or was she just a lunatic, an idiot who had lost her mind? Boom! Boom! Thunder rumbled, and the sky fell. With every step the woman took, endless Buddhist light bloomed above her head. It fell on her body and entered it. Gradually, her aura became weak. Even her face became a little illusory. However, she did not stop. Step by step, she walked toward Ling Zhao. Chapter 1362. I've finally found you. 3 reincarnations, 9 heavens, 10 domains. I've searched everywhere. Yao Guang reached out and touched Ling Zhao's face. She was gentle and cold, and her eyes were filled with stubbornness. I didn't expect you to be in the mortal world. Who are you? Ling Zhao frowned and asked calmly. Although he was confused, he did not sense any hostility from the woman in red. He did not even sense any demonic intent. Who am I? Suddenly, Yao Guang was stunned. She stared at Ling Zhao in a daze, and her eyes gradually shrouded with a shocking viciousness until they turned blood red. Boom! The originally peaceful world was suddenly filled with demonic intent. A vast amount of demonic intent covered the world. Even though the Buddhist radiance and scriptures were circulating in the sky, this time, it was difficult to suppress the demonic intent. However, what surprised Ling Xiao even more was that the demonic intent on the woman's body was very similar to his sky demon intent. Boom! Lightning struck and golden radiance suppressed the woman. However, the woman looked like a crazy demon. She stared at Ling Xiao in a daze. Her eyes were filled with fear. Who am I? Have you forgotten who I am? You know me? Ling Xiao's brows were tightly knitted, and his eyes were grave. If the woman in red was Yao Guang's demonic incarnation, then who was Yao Guang? Why did she have a demonic intent similar to the sky demons? Ha ha! I know you! How can I not know you? The woman in red looked up to the sky and laughed. Tears streamed down her face. Around her, the endless demonic intent evolved into many strange phenomena. The laws intertwined. The entire sea of lightning seemed to be boiling at this moment. Fear surfaced on the faces of the disciples from the ancient sects who were originally suppressing the divine pillars. Moreover, some of the weaker cultivators actually exploded and died the moment the demonic intent erupted from the divine pillars. It was too terrifying. The blue sky was dark and the horizon was blood-red. Only on the divine pillar, the golden radiance and demonic will alternately rose and merged perfectly. Everyone could vaguely feel that the great demon at the bottom of the lightning sea was about to emerge. Boom boom! In the Lotus Heart world, Ling Xiao stared coldly at the crazy woman in blood-red clothes in front of him. At this point, he was certain that this woman must have recognized his identity as the Sky Demon. But how was that possible? It's okay. I shouldn't have gotten angry. I'm sorry. I won't be separated from you again. After venting for a long time, the woman in crimson clothes gradually calmed down. Then, she stretched out her hand, and a shocking amount of demonic chi was awakened. Above the horizon, thousands of precepts manifested, finally condensing into the shape of a golden chain. Every petal of the lotus flowed with the charm of the great Tao. It was like a world of its own. The Buddhist scriptures that were originally whistling through the heavens and earth suddenly stopped the moment the golden lotus appeared. In the next moment, Shui Yaoguang waved his hand gently, and the scriptures that filled the sky immediately shattered. Endless Buddhist light fell, and the entire world began to shake and be destroyed. Ling Zhao's eyes turned cold, and his figure suddenly disappeared. At this moment, at the bottom of the lightning sea, Yao Guang, dressed in a white robe, was solemnly looking at the seven-colored treasure box in front of him, which was shining brighter with demonic radiance. Just now, Ling Zhao's divine sense entered the lotus. It seemed like a long time, but in fact it was only a moment. However, at this moment, Ling Xiao had already lost interest in the two Buddhist treasures in front of him. From the actions of the woman in crimson clothes just now, she must have been related to the Sky Demon 3 lifetimes ago. Reincarnation 3 lifetimes, searching the 9 heavens and 10 domains just to find traces of the Sky Demon. Once such a woman recovered her cultivation, she would definitely be an existence that stood above the immortal tribe. Therefore, Ling Xiao suddenly had a better idea. What he wanted to do was to let Yao Guang recover her demonic nature. In this way, he would be able to completely unravel the mystery of her origin. At this moment, Ling Zhao's lips suddenly curled into a subtle smile. With Yao Guang's temperament, it was impossible for her to take the initiative to fuse with the lotus heart, which contained demonic nature, into her body. In order to awaken her demonic nature, he still needed some friendly help. Ba, Master Ling Xiao, this demonic being is too ferocious. Later, I will try to use a Buddhist technique to seal it. However, if I am unfortunately corroded by the demonic will, please don't hesitate to kill me, young master. Yao Guang softly chanted the name of Buddha and turned to look at Ling Xiao. There was some determination in her eyes. Everything that happened today was the fault of the Buddhist sect. Even though Yao Guang still could not figure out why her senior brothers wanted to break the seal, she still could not understand. However, in the end, she should be the one to clean up the mess. The demonic being in front of her was simply too mysterious and terrifying. Just a wisp of the demonic will that swept through the sea of lightning was enough to make people absent-minded and have an instinctive desire to kill. With Yao Guang's cultivation, it would be very difficult for her to suppress it. She could only fight to the death. Leave it to me. Ling Xiao shook his head slightly. Without any hesitation, he lifted his foot and strode toward the area where the demonic will was pervading. Looking at the tall and slender figure, Yao Guang's bright eyes trembled. Suddenly, she stretched out her hand and grabbed Ling Xiao's arm. Ling Xiao, in fact. For the first time, Yao Guang did not call out young master. Instead, she called out Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. The smile on his face became even gentler. Bodhisattva, what's wrong? Be careful. I can feel that this demonic being is not ordinary. The demonic will it contains is something I can't suppress at all. Even with Yao Guang's Buddhist nature, she was unable to suppress the demonic will. Although Ling Xiao was immortal, she was still worried. Didn't you always think that I was a demon? If I'm corroded by this demonic will, wouldn't it be exactly what you want? Ling Xiao smiled. His eyes were strange. This way, Bodhisattva can legitimately kill me. Ling Xiao. Yao Guang was furious. Her Taoist heart trembled. She no longer had the calmness of a senior monk. She really did not expect that the young master of the Ling people would still have such a frivolous attitude at this time. However, looking at the smile on his face, Yao Guang inexplicably felt peaceful for a moment. Buddha Cloud, if I don't go to hell, who will go to hell? I, Ling Xiao, am not a good person, but I disdain to do something that requires a woman to take risk. But this, alright, don't worry. It's just a demonic being. What can it do to me? Ling Xiao stretched out his hand and lightly flicked Yao Guang's bald head. Yao Guang's expression froze for a moment, and her face turned red. Domineering, decisive. This young man seemed to be fearless. However, the more he was so, after seeing his ferocious side, and seeing the gentleness on his face, it was even more fascinating and irresistible. Ling Xiao, this, you take it. Yao Guang suddenly stretched out her hand and stuffed the string of golden jade beads in her palm into Ling Xiao's hand. Her face was red as she said, I've nourished this bead with my Buddhist nature for 300 years. Can keep your mind clear. Okay. Ling Xiao did not refuse. His eyes were full of coldness. Since you've already handed over your natal Buddhist treasure, I'll see how you're going to resist the demonic will's corrosion later. Chapter 1363. Ling Xiao. Just as Ling Xiao turned around and was about to walk towards the rainbow treasure box, Yao Guang called out to him. What's wrong with the Arhat today? Ling Xiao stopped and looked at Yao Guang with a puzzled expression. If I was corrupted by the demonic will, would you kill me? At this moment, Yao Guang's expression was extremely serious. Her bright eyes trembled. She wanted to hear the answer but was also afraid of hearing it. Even if you become a demon, you are still innocent. Why should I kill you? Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled, his tone gentle. I will keep you by my side until your demonic nature is completely removed. Ling Xiao, Yao Guang's eyes widened, and her beautiful face suddenly revealed a hint of gentleness. Be careful. Beep, the destined woman's Tao heart has been deceived, and she has believed in the devil's words. Congratulations to the host for plundering 2,000 luck points and 20,000 villain points. Yes. In the end, Ling Xiao no longer hesitated and walked towards the rainbow treasure box. However, at this moment, a buzzing sound suddenly came from the depths of the sea of lightning. Immediately after, a shocking saber intent tore through thousands of miles and descended with a loud bang. Even with Ling Zhao's strength, a hint of fear appeared on his face. He grabbed Yao Guang's jade-like hand and retreated a few meters away in a sorry state. Boom! The saber intent cut through the sea curtain and crushed down from the sky. It was as if an entire galaxy had fallen, emitting an extremely cold aura. Ling Zhao's eyes were gloomy. Even Yao Guang did not care about the hand that was being held by Ling Xiao, and his face was solemn. From this saber intent, she could feel a vast and terrifying holy will. It was obvious that the person's cultivation was definitely above the saint realm. However, in this heavenly thunder-forbidden land, the higher one's cultivation, the more terrifying the might of the heavenly thunder would be. There was even the possibility of dying if one was not careful. Who was it that dared to take such a risk and walk all the way to the depths of the Sea of Lightning? Dong dong! Then, a tall figure dressed in black suddenly walked out from the layers of sea curtains. Ling Xiao and Yao Guang looked at each other and saw the fear in each other's eyes. It was a silhouette surrounded by devil chi. His cultivation was at least at the 5th grade saint realm. At this time, his face was covered by a layer of demonic mist, and it was impossible to see his appearance clearly. However, it was clear that this man had come for the demonic creature. "Who are you?" Ling Xiao lifted his leg and shielded Yao Guang behind him, but there was not a trace of emotion in his eyes. The demonic figure in front of him was none other than the Shurpatian he had released from his realm. Since he wanted Yao Guang to willingly merge with the Lotus Core, he could only put her in a desperate situation and make her fall into despair. Earlier, Ling Zhao's answer had already touched Yao Guang's heart. If he was crushed by Shurpatian now, would Yao Guang choose to merge the demonic lotus and the 9 luminaries relic into her body to quickly gain the power to contend with a Saint Realm expert? In accordance with the wish of my master, the Sky Demon, to seize the demonic creature in the Sea of Lightning. Die. Shurpatian did not hesitate at all. He suddenly clenched his fist, and a blood-red ancient blade suddenly appeared in his hand and rushed toward Ling Xiao and Yao Guang. His saint aura was vast and mighty, and devil will was everywhere. Around Shurpatian, there seemed to be primordial devil chi rising, suppressing the Sea of Lightning and crushing the Sea of Lightning. A Saint Realm expert. Ling Zhao's expression changed drastically. He took a step forward, and the ancient sword in his hand bloomed with dazzling light as well. He brazenly faced Shurpatian. Clang! However, the moment the two collided, the descendant of the Ling people, who had always been able to crush all enemies, was sent flying backward and landed beside Yao Guang. How is this possible? Ling Xiao stood up in a daze, and there was blood at the corner of his mouth. Even the hand holding the sword was trembling slightly, as if it could not withstand the power of the demonic blade at all. As expected of the Sky Demon's subordinate. He's too strong. Ling Xiao, how are you? Yao Guang looked at Ling Xiao nervously, and the Buddhist light in her eyes bloomed. It was obvious that she was ready to attack. You are no match for him. However, just as the 10,000 Buddhas were standing around her and the golden lotus was blooming under her feet, Ling Xiao pressed on her shoulder and shook his head slightly. Go. I'll stop him. What? Take that demonic thing away. It must not fall into the hands of the Sky Demon. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. After saying that, Ling Xiao did not give Yao Guang any chance to speak. His figure flashed and rushed toward Shurpatian again. Above his head, 5 swords appeared at the same time, destroying yin and yang. Based on his understanding of Yao Guang, there was no way she would not care about Ling Zhao's life or death. That lotus heart was her companion item, and the two of them would definitely sense each other. In fact, in Ling Zhao's opinion, Yao Guang's previous fear was not due to fear of the demonic will, but helplessness towards that inexplicable feeling. Today, none of you can leave. Shurpatian snorted coldly. His black hair fluttered in the wind, making him look like an ancient demonic god. Then, he slashed out with his sword, and billions of demonic light bloomed, forming countless demonic runes. Buzz. Seeing this, Ling Zhao's expression became more serious. Spiritual light circled around his body, and the power of qi and blood condensed into a long cloud. It was obvious that he had used all his strength. Boom! The two figures fought in the depths of the Sea of Lightning. However, although Ling Zhao's combat power was strong, his cultivation was still in the revered realm. In just a short while, he was completely suppressed by Shurpatian. Blood spilled, and his attacks collapsed. Even Ling Zhao's black robe was gradually soaked with blood. Ling Xiao Yaoguang's eyes trembled. The wariness she had for Ling Xiao had completely disappeared. At this moment, she seemed to believe that the person who crushed her Bodhi Buddhist heart in the lower realm was not the young man in front of her. It was very likely a trap. A trap that targeted both the Buddhist sect and the Taigu Ling people. And to be able to do this, she could not think of any other possibility other than the Realm Lord who disappeared for no reason. After all, in the entire Azure continent, only the Realm Lord had the ability to detect Ling Zhao's existence. Perhaps, he had long known of the young master of the Ling people's monstrous talent. The Four Extremes and the Taigu Ling people had always been a thorn in the side of the Realm Lord. Provoking the descendants of the two great forces to fight, and then plotting to obtain the two supreme inheritances, such a scheme could be described as magnificent. Ling Xiao, I have wronged you. Looking at the crushed figure in the void, Yaoguang's eyes suddenly surged with regret. If Ling Xiao died at the bottom of the Sea of Lightning today, the Brahma Holy Land would be hated by the Taigu Ling people and even the entire human orthodoxy. In the end, this trip to the Sea of Lightning was caused by her Buddhist disciple. No, Ling Xiao must not die. Suddenly, Buddhist light bloomed in Yaoguang's eyes. She seemed to have made a decision. In this extreme lightning ground, even the strongest of the Ling people could not easily appear. Therefore, the key to breaking the current situation was only her and Ling Xiao. Now, it seemed that even if Ling Xiao was invincible in this generation, he was still weak and insignificant in front of the Sky Demon's subordinate. The only variable was that demonic being. Chapter 1364. Ever since the treasure in the Sea of Lightning appeared, Yaoguang felt a faint trace of fear from the bottom of her heart. She had comprehended the Tao of karma, and was able to instinctively sense the karma of the world. Although she still did not know what that demonic being was, she felt a sense of familiarity from her blood and bones. It was as if that demonic being belonged to her to begin with. Furthermore, Yaoguang would only be complete after fusing with it. What exactly was it? Yaoguang raised her foot and walked over to the seven-colored treasure box. Her eyes shone with golden light as Buddha nature emanated from her. 10,000 Buddhas were standing in the sky above her. They were either chanting Buddhist scriptures or knocking on Buddhist artifacts. Immediately, the entire Sea of Lightning fell silent. Only the sound of Buddhist chanting could calm people and purge the demonic intent. Yaoguang lowered her head and looked at the golden lotus and the 9 luminaries relic placed in the 7-colored treasure box. Her eyes trembled slightly. At this moment, she could sense that what was compatible with her bloodline was not the 9 luminaries relic. Instead, it was the golden lotus. However, although the lotus also contained supreme Buddha nature, the aura it emitted was incomparably pure demonic intent. Exactly, what are you? Yaoguang turned around and glanced at the black-clothed figure falling from the sky. The last trace of hesitation in her eyes quietly disappeared. Then, she extended her lily-white hand with the intention of picking up the golden lotus. But, the instant her fingertips touched the golden lotus, the 10,000 Buddhas in the sky suddenly froze. Then, the eyes of the Buddhas that were originally filled with Buddha nature suddenly flickered with a scarlet radiance. The boundless Buddha radiance dispersed with a loud bang. It was replaced by cold and sinister demonic light. The golden lotus turned into a ray of light and instantly enveloped Yaoguang's body. Boom! Waves rose from the bottom of the sea of lightning again. The boundless lightning waterfall splashed out in defiance of the heavens with boundless might. Sensing the movement behind him, a smile immediately appeared on Ling Zhao's face. It would appear that Yaoguang had taken the same path as the lower realms and fallen into the trap that he had personally set up. However, Ling Zhao didn't know what kind of existence she would become after fusing with the demonic lotus and the demonic nature in the lotus world. However, regardless of whether it was the demonic nature that dominated her mind or the Buddha nature that suppressed her demonic heart, it would be difficult for her to escape from Ling Zhao's grasp. Either he would die and prove that the Brahma Holy Land was hiding a devil. Otherwise, he would transform into a demon and accompany Ling Zhao as he slaughtered the 9 heavens. Kill. Damn it! Ling Zhao and Shurpatian were still fighting with all their might. Their spiritual powers collided, and screams of pain could be heard from time to time. But, just as his figure was cut down by Shurpatian's saber, a fair and slender hand suddenly reached out from the void behind him and gently held him in her arms. Furthermore, at this moment, Ling Zhao could feel the force coming from her hand. Even his physical body felt tight and suffocating. Ling Zhao turned his head and looked at the beautiful face in front of him. His eyes quietly trembled. At this time, although Yaoguang was still wearing a white robe, black hair had grown out of her head like a waterfall. In particular, the blood lotus between her eyebrows was blooming with a dazzling brilliance. More importantly, her luck had risen to 50,000 points. So, in this life, your name is Ling Zhao? Yaoguang's red lips parted slightly. Thousands of demonic runes flashed in her eyes, and the corners of her mouth curved into an enchanting and charming smile. Obviously, at this time, she was dominated by the demonic nature and had fused with Yaoguang's memories. Beep, the destined woman is determined. She has awakened the memories of her previous life. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 50,000 luck points and 500,000 villain points. Beep, the destined woman has surrendered. Congratulations to the host for obtaining an additional luck plundering talisman. Beep, the destined woman has surrendered. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the glazed Buddha body. Beep, the destined woman has surrendered. Congratulations to the host for obtaining karma and light Tao law. Who are you? Ling Zhao frowned. He wanted to break free from Yaoguang's embrace, but she hugged him even tighter. Since you are Ling Zhao, then in this life, I am Yaoguang. After saying that, Yaoguang looked up at Shurpatian. With just a glance, this 5th stage Saint Stage Great Demon's mind almost collapsed. Then, before Shurpatian could react, thousands of blood-red lights quietly bloomed. In the space in front of Shurpatian, the shadows of blood-red lotuses suddenly appeared one after another. In a breath's time, the entire sea of lightning seemed to have stagnated and was dyed with endless blood. Boundless, gloomy, and endless evil shrouded heaven and earth. Only desolation was left in the world. I will never allow anyone to hurt you again. Yaoguang smiled gently. Even though she was surrounded by demonic intent, she still gave people a sense of holiness and clarity. Like a lotus, she looked up at Ling Zhao. When their eyes met, Ling Zhao actually saw a trace of unrepentant obsession in this woman's eyes. 3 lifetimes of searching, 190,000 years of waiting. This kind of emotion should have already transcended life and death. Buzz. However, the moment the blood-red lotuses bloomed, Shurpatian's figure strangely disappeared. Yaoguang's face flashed with a faintly discernible smile. She turned her head to look at the young man in front of her. Her red lips parted slightly. Ling Zhao, I need to go into seclusion for a period of time so that I can completely merge my Buddha and demon bodies. Okay. Ling Zhao nodded gently. Since Yao Guang had merged with the Lotus Heart and obtained the system's approval to submit, he could completely trust her in the future. However, what slightly surprised Ling Xiao was that her realm did not seem to have any obvious increase after merging with the Lotus Heart. However, the attack of the red lotuses just now made even Ling Xiao's heart palpitate. This 9 luminaries Saraira is a Buddhist treasure, take it. I'm not interested in Buddhist items. Ling Xiao shook his head. Since Yao Guang knew his identity, she must have guessed Sure Potion's origin. However, since she did not ask, Ling Xiao was too lazy to explain. Although Yao Guang had some feelings for Ling Xiao, it was far from submitting to him. However, this demonic body was related to the sky demon in many ways. Therefore, it was reasonable for the two to submit to each other. Of course, if this bodhisattva of the West Pole was still controlled by her Buddhist nature and knew Ling Xiao's identity, in that case, she would only end up like an evil demon hiding in the Buddhist sects, getting killed by Ling Xiao in public. Okay. Then I'll find a place to go into seclusion. I'll come back to find you after I've completely merged with the Buddhist nature and demonic intent in my body. Yao Guang hugged Ling Xiao tightly and whispered in his ear. At this moment, she was a completely different person from the previous dull and stiff bodhisattva of the West Pole. However, this kind of evil and seductive aura had its own charm. No need. I'll find a place for you. Ling Xiao's mind moved, and the two of them suddenly appeared in the realm. Yao Guang's face immediately revealed a hint of astonishment. She raised her head and looked at the spirit sword divine tower that pierced through the clouds in the distant horizon, as well as the black-clothed figure that was quietly sitting cross-legged on the sword divine tower. Her eyes suddenly focused. I have a question. Ling Xiao stood with his hands behind his back, his eyes calm. How did you know my identity? Chapter 1365. When Ling Xiao entered the world inside the lotus with his soul consciousness, he didn't use any demonic intent at all. His body was the purple Qi pure Tao body. How did the woman before him recognize him? Although the three bodies were interconnected in terms of divine soul realm, physical strength, Taoist laws, cultivation techniques, and spiritual treasures, the sky demon only had one true body, which was Ling Xiao's true body. If Yao Guang could recognize Ling Xiao's identity so easily, did it mean that others could do it too? I was born in the chaos with you. Our fates are intertwined. Not to mention a soul consciousness, even a look is enough for me to know if it's you. Yao Guang smiled and turned to Ling Xiao. However, you are a little different. You are different from the you in my memory. Is that so? In this world, who can truly be eternally unchanging? Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. His eyes were filled with vicissitudes. Although his divine soul had merged with the sky demon's divine talisman of absolute beginning, it was no longer the sky demon's true body. Perhaps what Yao Guang felt familiar was the aura of the divine talisman of absolute beginning. But no matter what, a person who lived and died with the sky demon must be the true peak of the 9 heavens. Even so, her fate was still only 50,000. Even if it would increase in the future, it was still nothing compared to Gu Chao Ci. So, what kind of identity did Gu Chao Ci have? You're right. Ling Xiao, the river of time is endless, the cycle of reincarnation is endless. However, 3 lifetimes, 190,000 years. I've thought of giving up before, but I couldn't do it. No matter what you become, in this lifetime, I will accompany you to return to the peak of the 9 heavens and kill all those who betrayed you. Yao Guang smiled faintly, but the eyes she looked at Ling Xiao were filled with endless love. There are still many of my followers in this realm. Don't hurt them, Ling Xiao said indifferently before disappearing from the spot. Yao Guang, on the other hand, did not speak for a long time. He only quietly looked at the figure sitting cross-legged in the void, his eyes trembling, containing deep meaning. In this life, I won't hand you over to others on a silver platter. Above the thunder sea, the demonic will divine pillar shattered. Boundless golden radiance sprinkled down, dyeing the sea's screen golden. The expressions of the disciples of the ancient sects, who were guarding the divine pillars, changed drastically. They all retreated hundreds of meters and looked at the depths of the sea of lightning warily. Only when a black-clothed figure slowly walked out from within did everyone's faces reveal a wisp of excitement. "Look, it's Lord Ling Xiao. The young master is out. Where is Yaoguang Bodhisattva?" Many people's faces were filled with joy and excitement. If young master was fine, did that mean the demonic creature at the bottom of the sea of lightning had been sealed by him again? "Young master!" Xianyuan Weiyang and Bai Jishi rushed over and stood in front of Ling Xiao. "Where is the Bodhisattva?" "The Bodhisattva has been corroded by the demonic will in order to seal the demonic creature. I have suppressed her in the Ling people's sacred artifact. I hope to use it to refine the demonic will in her body." Ling Xiao shook his head and sighed. His eyes were filled with sorrow. "What? The Bodhisattva?" Hearing this, everyone's faces were filled with shock and complicated emotions. Who would have thought that the Bodhisattva of the West Pole, the person with the strongest Buddhist nature in the Brahma Holy Land in the last 10,000 years, would one day be corroded by the demonic will and fall into the demonic path? Although today's matter was caused by the Buddhist sections, Yaoguang had only himself to blame for falling into such a state. However, looking at the wounds on the young master's body, it seemed that the two of them had experienced an extremely dangerous situation in the depths of the Thunder Sea. "The young master is righteous. Alright, everyone, since the demonic creature has been sealed, the Ling people will definitely guard this Thunder Sea carefully. We will not give the demonic creature any more opportunities to take advantage of. Everyone disperse." Ling Xiao waved his hand and took the lead with Xianyuan Weiyang and Bai Jishi, walking out of the thunder field. However, just as the three figures were about to step out of the thunder field, Ling Xiao's face suddenly raised a playful look. "Weiyang, Jishi, you two go back to the Ling people first." Big brother, where are you going?" "I'm going too." Bai Jishi and Xianyuan Weiyang hugged Ling Xiao's arms from left and right with a pleading look on their faces. "I have some things to do with the bewildering butterfly ancestor. Are you sure you want to follow me?" Ling Xiao smiled. When Bai Jishi heard the words bewildering butterfly, a look of fear suddenly appeared on her small face. Her small head shook like a rattle drum. I'm not going. Big brother, I'm going back to the Ling people now." Bai Jishi's big eyes rolled, and her pink pupils were full of craftiness. "Sister Weiyang, you can go with big brother. But there's something I have to tell you in advance. The bewildering butterfly ancestor hates it when a woman follows big brother around. She said that it will hinder big brother's cultivation. Once she sees you, she will catch you and bring you to the Ling people's ancestral land to cultivate in seclusion. You have to be careful." "Ah, really? The bewildering butterfly ancestor is so strict." Xianyuan Weiyang's pretty face turned pale. She actually let go of Ling Xiao's arm and said timidly, "Then young master, I'll go back to the Ling people first." Although she had not received young master's heart, she could still rely on her status to stay by his side. Once she was caught by the bewildering butterfly ancestor, it would be difficult for her to stay by young master's side. Wu one Gu Chao Ci was scary enough. Now there was another bewildering butterfly ancestor. It was so dangerous to stay by young master's side. Yes. Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. In particular, the smugness in Bai Jishi's eyes made him unable to restrain his laughter. Although this lass often did some silly things, she had a lot of unorthodox thoughts. Xianyuan Weiyang was a complete simpleton. It was reasonable for her to be tricked and deceived by her. "Then let's go, Sister Weiyang." Bai Jishi smiled smugly and turned to make a face at Ling Xiao. Then, she disappeared into the distant sky. It was not until the two figures were far away that the gentleness on Ling Zhao's face gradually froze. Then, he took out a voice transmission talisman from his universe ring and said softly, "You can start now." "Yes, brother." As early as Ling Xiao entered the Thunder region, Bai Ling and the others had roped in a few elders of the Killing God Hall and were ready to fight to the death with Qin Yang. According to Bai Ling, after Holy Maiden Qi Luo and Qin Yang joined forces to kill Xia Chen, she suddenly returned to the Jade Lake sacred ground and did not appear again. Of course, Ling Xiao was not surprised by this result. This was the drama of the return of an immortal emperor, a celestial venerable, and an immortal king. There would definitely be a melodramatic, emotional reversal at the end of the revenge. For example, her family was threatened, her sect was suppressed, and the Holy Maiden had no choice but to join forces with her brothers to backstab her. However, when the immortal king returned and killed this traitorous Holy Maiden, she would definitely tell the truth before she died to prove her innocence. However, now Ling Xiao was slightly puzzled. What was Qin Yang's background? 300 years ago, he was just a peak emperor god. What qualifications did he have to threaten Holy Maiden Qi Luo? Interesting. It seemed that Qin Yang's background was not simple. Of course, no matter what Qin Yang's background was, in terms of background, Ling Xiao did not look down on anyone. Everyone in the Qin Tsang sect was trash. As long as he could find Qi Luo and resolve her concerns, she would personally testify against Qin Yang. Then, the master of the Killing God Hall would really lose his reputation. Chapter 1366. 13th Ancestor. Ask Ancestor Mi Dai to come to the Green Jade Mountain, which is north of the extreme lightning place. Ling Xiao took out a voice transmission talisman and said softly. He had 2 heavenly sovereign corpse puppets in his hand. However, it was better not to expose them. Otherwise, if they were recognized, it could lead to endless disasters. Now, it seemed that there was another force behind the Killing Shrine, or Qin Yang. It was an immortal clan that the Jade Lake sacred ground did not dare to disobey. Yes, young lord. Ling Yuanxing's voice was extremely calm. He did not question any of Ling Zhao's decisions. Ling Xiao had now proven his talent and temperament. A sky demon who knew how to scheme for the sake of the common people was undoubtedly much more terrifying than 190,000 years ago. The Jade Lake sacred ground. To talk about this sacred ground, one had to start from 300 years ago. It was said that 300 years ago, a genius suddenly appeared in the Jade Lake sacred ground. She was unparalleled in appearance and peerless talent. Moreover, if it was not for the appearance of Gu Chaoxiai, the Jade Lake sacred ground would be recognized as the #1 beauty in the Azure world. However, when she was at the peak of her fame, she suddenly fell in love with a young man with no background and went through a lot of hardship. In the end, the young man obtained the Slayer Emperor's inheritance and established the Killing Shrine, which attracted countless experts to join him. Originally, everyone thought that the two of them would have a perfect ending. However, to everyone's surprise, Palace Master Xia Chen actually colluded with the Ghost Clan and practiced evil arts. Qi Luo, the sacred ground, was even more ruthless. She joined forces with her best brother, Qin Yang, to expose the conspiracy and kill Xia Chen. Since then, Qi Luo had disappeared without a trace. There was no news of her for 300 years. As for Qin Yang, he naturally took the position of the Killing Shrine Master and hid in the dark, secretly becoming the most mysterious and young force in the Azure world. White clouds floated in the void. A black-clothed figure stood in front of an ancient mountain with his hands behind his back. He looked up at the spiritual fog gathered at the peak of the mountain. This ancient mountain was also at the edge of the heavenly thunder region, where the Jade Lake sacred ground was located. It was rumored that there was a celestial pond at the peak of the mountain called the Jade Pond. As for the ancestor of the Jade Lake sacred ground, she was a fairy who had descended from the 9 heavens to the mortal world. She left behind her legacy, and ascended to the celestial realm once more. Of course, whether the rumors were true or false, there was no way for future generations to verify. But this power had always only accepted female disciples, and every single one of them was beautiful and formidable. Thus it was rather renowned in the azure sky world. Ling Xiao lifted his foot and headed towards the peak of the mountain. However, just as his figure appeared in front of the gate of the Holy Land, he saw two graceful figures descending from the sky. They held ancient swords in their hands and blocked his path. Stop! The Jade Lake sacred ground did not allow men to set foot there. Anyone who disobeys will be executed. Two pretty girls in yellow dresses stood in front of Ling Xiao, one on the left and one on the right. However, when they saw this young man with a peerless appearance and a gentle expression, the coldness on their faces silently turned cold, and inexplicably rose into the air. Senior sister. He is so handsome. Cough, cough, useless. Master once said that all men are like poisonous insects, and they will only poison our Dao hearts. The slightly older girl snorted coldly and suddenly walked towards Ling Xiao. She bowed slightly and said, "Young master, are you lost? Our Jade Lake sacred ground does not allow outsiders to enter, especially men." The remaining female disciples stared blankly at their senior sister's shy and flattering face, and their lips trembled slightly. For a moment they could not react in time. "Is Saintess Qi Luo on the mountain?" Ling Xiao smiled gently. His bright eyes made the two Jade Lake disciples feel dizzy. Their bodies went soft and they almost passed out. "Yes, she is. But, young master, our Jade Lake sacred ground does not allow buzz." Before the female disciple's voice trailed off, Ling Xiao took a step forward and turned into a shadow, heading straight for the peak of the mountain. Senior sister. He went in. He went in. What a domineering young master. The two girls' eyes rippled. After a while, they were stunned. Oh no. How can he barge into our Jade Lake sacred ground? The elders will kill him. Quick, chase after him. Whoosh, whoosh. The sound of wind breaking suddenly resounded between heaven and earth. Three figures flew from the foot of the mountain and soon arrived in front of the main hall at the peak of the mountain. Looking at the black-robed young man who suddenly appeared, many female disciples in front of the hall were stunned. Then, they revealed a touch of shock and excitement. What a handsome young master! He looks like an immortal. What's the noise? At this moment, a stern voice suddenly came from the main hall. Then, a dignified middle-aged beautiful woman in a palace dress slowly walked out of the main hall. However, the moment her eyes fell on Ling Xiao, a touch of shock and confusion appeared on her face. "Who are you? How dare you barge into our Jade Lake sacred ground?" "Ling people, Ling Xiao," Ling Xiao said indifferently, but the beautiful woman swallowed the threatening words that were about to come out of her mouth. "Ling people? Ling Xiao." Even though the Jade Lake sacred ground had not appeared in the world for a long time, the situation in Qingtsang was still very clear. Now, heaven and earth were in chaos. Whether it was the sky demon or the monster and ghost race, they were all eyeing this world covetously and vainly trying to conquer this world. If it were not for the Lord Ling Xiao, the successor of the Ling people, the current generation of the human race would have been completely crushed and humiliated during the Lord of Daotian Manor's lecture that day. Now, there was no one in Qingtsang who did not know about this young master. His celestial appearance was unique, and he already had the power to control the heavens at such a young age. Moreover, although his personality was incomparably domineering, it was said that he was extremely biased and protective of his family and servants. Such a person would always become the ruler of heaven and earth, and be worshipped by all ages. However, why did this young master suddenly come to the Jade Lake sacred ground? One had to know that in the past 300 years, no one from the Jade Lake had appeared in the world, and it was not involved in any worldly karma. So it's Master Ling Xiao. The beautiful middle-aged woman took a deep breath. Even though she was in the Holy Plane, she actually bowed down to Ling Xiao. Seeing this, the Jade Lake's disciples were even more shocked. They looked at Ling Xiao with curiosity. I wonder why the young master has come today. There are some things that I would like to ask the saint. Ling Xiao smiled as his gaze wandered over the Jade Lake's disciples. Although these female disciples looked beautiful, none of them were fated. It was a pity. Saint? Xihua, go and call the saint. The beautiful middle-aged woman nodded slightly and spoke softly to a disciple beside her. Yes, saint. Very quickly there was the sound of hurried footsteps from behind the great hall. The young girl named Xihua had left and returned. Her eyes were filled with excitement. Behind her was a beautiful young girl in green. She had a confused look on her face. It was obvious that she did not know why the young master of the Ling people suddenly wanted to see her. Young master, this is the Jade Lake Saint Li Wantong. Chapter 1367. Li Wantong. Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. The shy look on the Jade Lake Saint's face made her look even more innocent and adorable. It made one feel pity for her. She had 7,000 providence points. Although it wasn't much, it was still worth it. Young master, why are you looking for me? I don't think I've met you before. Li Wantong's voice was soft and charming. It didn't match her looks. I'm not looking for you. I'm looking for Qi Luo. Ling Xiao shook his head. A woman with providence like her was at most a servant girl. His top priority now was to kill Qin Yang and take control of the killing shrine. As for this saint of the Jade Lake, Ling Xiao wouldn't mind discussing the amount of water in the Jade Lake with her in the future if there was a suitable opportunity. Ah? So it's senior sister Qi Luo. Li Wantong was stunned. She glared at Xihua angrily. Qi Luo? Why are you looking for Qi Luo? The Jade Lake Saint leader looked serious. Yes, Qi Luo used to be the Jade Lake Saint. But now, her Tao heart was broken, and she had no hope of becoming an immortal. She spent all her time in the ancestral hall, eating vegetarian food and praying to Buddha. She didn't have the heart to cultivate. 200 years ago, the honorific title of Jade Lake Saintess had been given to Li Wantong. Of course. Ling Xiao frowned. His eyes turned cold. The Jade Lake Saint leader felt a chill run down her spine. She was intimidated by this young man. Qi Luo is in the ancestral hall at the back of the mountain. But young master, Qi Luo hasn't seen anyone in 300 years. It's okay. She will see me. Ling Xiao smiled and turned to Li Wantong. Senior sister Li, can you show me the way? Sure. Young master, this way please. Li Wantong's disappointment disappeared. She turned and walked towards the back of the mountain. The Jade Lake sacred leader's face only turned gloomy after the two of them had left. With Ling Xiao's looks and talent, he was irresistible to any young girl. However, back then, Qi Luo had fallen to his current state because his heart had been moved. Compared to Xia Chen, Ling Xiao was undoubtedly 10,000 times more outstanding. She wondered if the Jade Lake Saintess would be safe and sound this time. Does senior sister Li cultivate in the mountains all year round? The mountain path was winding. Ling Xiao and Yi Zichen walked side by side. Now that Bai Ling, Xia Zhimeng, Yu Yi, and the others had just left, this trip to the Killing God Temple had just begun, so he was not in a hurry to show himself. After all, he had to pry open Qi Luo's mouth first and find out about Qin Yang's true background. Only in this way would he be absolutely safe. And ever since senior sister Qi Luo returned to the sect, Master has not allowed anyone to leave the mountain for the past 300 years. Li Wantong smiled bitterly, a trace of yearning flashing in her eyes. The situation in Azure Sky was turbulent, but to the people of the current generation, it was a good opportunity to gain experience. What kind of fortune could he encounter if he stayed in the mountains all day? I see. In the future, if senior sister wants to leave the mountain to gain experience, you can go with me. I have some reputation in the azure sky world. Ling Xiao nodded with a smile. A saintess who has never been born, with a little pinch, her fortune would fall off her body along with her clothes. Ah, okay. Li Wantong did not expect Ling Xiao to take the initiative to invite her down the mountain. Her beautiful eyes flashed with anticipation. But, young master, my senior sister is not easy to get along with. When you see her later, you will have to return empty-handed. Is that so? Ling Zhao's expression was calm and he did not explain. The reason why Qi Luo trapped him in the ancestral temple was to atone for the sins in his heart. But after 300 years, this sin has become even heavier. It is easy for people to forgive others, but the hardest thing is to forgive oneself. Therefore, Ling Xiao decided to give her a chance to kill her enemy and return justice to Xiachen. Yes, young master, there is something you do not know. Back then, my senior sister had a beloved Taoist companion. But she did not expect him to collude with the ghost kind and practice an evil technique. In the end, my senior sister cut off all ties with him and killed him in the house. Li Wantong suddenly lowered her voice and whispered into Ling Zhao's ear. After that, my senior sister locked herself in the ancestral temple. Maybe she wanted to atone for that man's sins. It's been 300 years, and she has never stepped out of the temple. She has never spoken to anyone. I see. Ling Xiao nodded softly. When he lifted his head, he saw an ancient temple made of green stones standing at the end of the mountain. His eyes were emotionless. Originally, the person who walked into the Jade Lake today was the reborn Xiachen. However, this son of destiny met Ling Xiao as soon as he was born, and he ended up dying. Therefore, his revenge could only be avenged by Ling Xiao. Brother Xia, you do not need to thank me. Young master, we are here. Li Wantong stopped and did not dare to step closer to the stone temple. Young master, my senior sister's temper is a little irritable. Usually, other than my master, no one dares to step into the temple. You can go back. Ling Xiao walked to the front of the stone hall and pushed the door open. Instantly, a wave of dark energy rushed towards him. It was obvious that no one had been here for a long time. Li Wantong was not in a hurry to leave. She was afraid that Ling Xiao would be chased out by Qi Luo. Her hands hung in front of her and her face was full of worry. Today, she saw that this descendant of the Ling people was just like the rumors. She was gentle and polite. There was not a trace of arrogance in her. Sure enough, there were no lies behind his great reputation. Holy Lady Qi Luo. At this moment, Ling Zhao's eyes flickered with astonishment as he looked at the figure kneeling on the ground in hemp clothes with long hair that reached the ground. Logically speaking, with Qi Luo's talent, she should have entered the saint realm after 300 years. However, she did not. She was only at the second level of the exalted realm. She was not even comparable to the current generation. It seemed that she had suffered for the past 300 years. Hearing the voice, Qi Luo's body trembled slightly. She turned her head in a daze. In the next moment, her beautiful eyes narrowed. The sunlight outside the temple poured in, making Ling Zhao's figure look even more slender and tall. At this moment, his face was not clear. Only a faint outline could be seen. Inexplicably, Qi Luo covered her mouth with her jade-like hand. In addition to panic, there was also a hint of relief in her eyes. Ah Chen! I am not Xia Chen. My name is Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao walked in front of Qi Luo. The latter's expression instantly froze. She stared blankly at Ling Xiao. Looking at his handsome and determined face, the light in her eyes dimmed instantly. Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao, at this moment, Qi Luo no longer had the appearance of a holy lady. She looked tired and her hair was dull. In fact, compared to the Jade Lake sacred leader, she lacked some charm. I don't know you. You can leave. You don't know me, holy lady, but I know Xiachen. Ling Xiao laughed coldly. A person at the second level of the exalted realm was naturally not a threat to him. If Ling Xiao wanted to, he could capture her at any time and search her soul. Chapter 1368. Actually, Ling Xiao had already roughly guessed what would happen between Qi Luo, Xiachen, and Qin Yang. Her biggest role now was to expose Qin Yang's evil deeds in front of the massacre shrine's experts. At that time, no matter who was behind him, he would die. It was not difficult for Ling Xiao to kill Qi Luo. However, if she died, Ling Xiao's words and the soul-sucking ghost pearl would not be enough to convince the crowd. Therefore, Qi Luo could die, but she had to die in front of the massacre shrine's experts. What? As expected, Qi Luo's expression changed when she heard Ling Xiao's words. Her eyes flashed with despair and fear. Ling! Even though she had not left the mountain for 300 years, she knew what this surname meant. The Taigu Ling people dominated the world. In the entire Azure Sky continent, there wasn't a single person who dared to put this word in their name. It was taboo. However, this young man looked to be in his early 20s. How could he know Xiachen? Senior brother Xiachen has been open and aboveboard all his life. I didn't expect him to end up like this. How sad. Ling Xiao sighed softly and turned to close the door. On the distant mountain peak, Li Wantong looked at the door of the ancestral hall that had suddenly closed, and a look of surprise appeared on her face. What are you trying to say? How could you know Xiachen? Qi Luo frowned and stared at Ling Xiao tiredly. Although this clan's heavenly might was unparalleled and inviolable, the current Qi Luo had already disregarded life and death. Don't you have anything to say to me? For example, Qin Yang's identity, or how he forced you to hurt Xiachen. Ling Xiao's lips curled into a sinister smile. He suddenly grabbed Qi Luo's neck and pulled her in front of him. This woman looked like she had nothing left to live for. If he wanted to open her heart, he could only start with Xiachen. Due to the guilt she felt towards this killer emperor, she would definitely not be on guard against someone who wanted to avenge Xiachen. As long as Ling Xiao showed enough loyalty, Qi Luo would not be able to escape his control. I'll give you a chance to explain what happened back then. Otherwise, I'll send you and Qin Yang to hell together. Ling Xiao's ferocious expression did not frighten Qi Luo. On the contrary, just as Ling Xiao had expected, Qi Luo's face was devoid of any expression other than guilt. Speak. Tell me how you know about Xiachen. Qi Luo spoke with difficulty, but her voice was extremely calm. You all thought that your plan was flawless, but that's not the case. The soul-sucking ghost pearl. You all did not obtain it, did you? Ling Xiao coldly snorted and forcefully threw Qi Luo onto the ground. Unfortunately, I found that pearl by chance in a dangerous place, and a strand of Xiachen's remnant soul still hasn't been destroyed. What? A glimmer of hope suddenly appeared in Qi Luo's eyes, and his entire body trembled uncontrollably. I knew it! I knew it! He's the Massacre Emperor! Where is he? A remnant soul. It's just a lingering obsession. By the time he told me the truth, his soul had completely dissipated. No! Qi Luo howled in agony. Like a trapped beast, he exuded endless despair. All these years, I've been investigating in secret. I found that things were not as simple as the rumors made them out to be. Until I found Xiachen's daughter and Elder Yu. Ling Xiao's eyes were cold, but there was no pity in his heart. He was all too familiar with this plot. It was obvious that Qi Luo's last line of defense was slowly crumbling. Elder Yu's daughter, you mean, even at the moment of his death, Xiachen did not believe that you would betray him. Thus, he told me that I must get to the bottom of this matter. I will give you a chance. Tell me everything you know. Of course, no matter what, all those who betrayed senior brother Xiachen must die. Ling Zhao's expression was stern. From the outside, he looked like he was burning with rage and wanted to avenge his friend. Qi Luo finally closed her eyes and fell silent. At this moment, Ling Xiao was not in a hurry. He just looked at the woman in front of him quietly. He believed that her identity as the young master of Ling people was enough for her to let go of her worries. Truth, so what if I know the truth? Would anyone dare to offend the World Lord Palace for a dead Sha Di? In the end, Qi Luo laughed bitterly. Her eyes were filled with tears. She looked up at Ling Xiao, as if waiting for his answer. The World Lord Palace can't protect an evil demon who framed an outstanding member of the righteous path. Ling Zhao's indifferent words made Qi Luo's eyes narrow. She seemed to have made a decision. She slowly stood up and bowed to Ling Xiao. Ling people, young man, if you can promise to protect the Jade Lake sacred ground, even if I die, I'll prove Xiachen's innocence and tell you everything that happened 300 years ago. As the young master of Ling people, I promise that no one can touch the Jade Lake sacred ground. Ling Xiao frowned and nodded slowly. So, you mean Qin Yang is a disciple of the World Lord Palace? The World Lord Palace has 7 palaces. One of them is called the Shadow Soul Palace. The World Lord Palace secretly collects information and kills traitors. Qin Yang is the successor of this palace. Qi Luo took a deep breath and finally revealed a secret that had been suppressed in her heart for 300 years. Shadow Soul Palace? Ling Zhao's eyes narrowed. He was naturally familiar with the 7 palaces of the World Lord. It was rumored that the World Lord was invincible not only because of his powerful cultivation, but also because of his 7 subordinates. These 7 people were all unparalleled and had terrifying cultivation levels. Later on, the World Lord suppressed the entire world and established the World Lord Palace to control the world. These 7 people also established their own forces and were given the title of Palace Lord. However, as the World Lord disappeared, these 7 palaces also hid in the dark and disappeared without a trace. Who would have thought that Qin Yang was the successor of one of the palaces? At this point, Ling Xiao finally understood why Qin Yang insisted on controlling the Killing God Palace, and why Qi Luo was willing to submit to him. With the supreme power of the World Lord Palace, the Jade Lake sacred ground would not dare to be its enemy. The soul-sucking ghost pearl was just a catalyst. What Qin Yang really cared about was the inheritance of the Killing God, or rather the dark reign secretly controlled by the experts of the Killing God Palace. That's right. Back then, when Qin Yang knew of the existence of the Killing God Palace, he had been scheming to get close to Xiachen and secretly set up a battle between him and the 3rd successor of the ghost race to obtain the soul-sucking ghost pearl. From the moment Ling Xiao mentioned Yu Yi's name, Qi Luo believed everything he said. Because even Qin Yang had not been able to find this supreme being expert until now. All of this had started from the battle between the monstrous geniuses of the human and ghost clans. I see. Ling Zhao's eyes turned cold. He had a better understanding of this successor of the Shadow Soul Palace. After many layers of planning, he finally killed his close friend and obtained everything. With his relationship with Xiachen, it was likely that no one would suspect his intentions. With Qi Luo, the Killing God Palace's followers, even those of the Killing God Palace who followed Xiachen would be shaken. Ruthless and heartless. Qin Yang's temperament was more profound than the Children of Destiny that Ling Xiao had seen. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.